An age ago, the beating heart of our people was a king who knew only victory. He wanted nothing more than an honorable death on the battlefield. Yet, none could match him, and so he wandered the earth, becoming lost in time and tide. Then we too lost our honest purpose, while silk-clad men sat upon the throne. But tremble now, all cities that lay under the stars, for out of the shadows and mists of the land of promise, our courage has been rekindled. Our heart has returned, and the world will burn.
Great.
How's everybody doing?
How you doing, everybody?
John is sniping me with his long distance camera.
Yep. You'll never know. I got drones. I got drones in your forest.
Don't get me started with the drones, John. Don't get me started.
You got drone problem?
No, I'm just saying they're making it illegal for people to use drones to fly over things, and yet they have these gigantic, what is it, advertisements with drones going over like California and things like that. I mean, we can't do it, they can't do it. That's my interpretation in the whole thing, right?
Right. The government can do whatever it wants, and we can't. I'm mad now because HOV lanes. There's I don't know if you have them. I forget what they stand for, but you need to have either the magic car, the clean gas car, or at least two people in the car to drive in them.
It was a carpooling,
yeah. But I pay taxes. I pay for that road. You know what I mean? Like, the government's forcing me to have friends. How dare they? I don't want friends. I don't want to drive with anybody in my car.
Buy some mannequins, John. What's that? Buy some mannequins. Put them in the back seat. You're good.
But if I buy a special car, so my ability to travel to and from work and use the public roads, I have to buy a product. I thought that was against the Commerce Clause. I just find it to be unconstitutional. It violates my right to assemble and the Commerce Clause. So I got, HOV lanes is just shenanigans. I'm calling shenanigans. I'm
just waiting for the flying cars to come along, John. They're pretty much here now. We got one person flying car. They have basically the speeder from Return of the Jedi. We got that already, and they have upped it to one person vehicle, which you can fly now like that. And they're working on multiple person. They're coming with the flying cars, John. They're coming with flying cars.
Yeah, they're basically drones, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, electric drones. Yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of scared because you think people can't drive now? Wait until they fly. Oh, I just got a message from Chuck Dixon. Cool.
John's just dropping names. All the people who's working. Look at that.
I just realized what I said. I just got excited. But he messaged me yesterday, said our story is complete tomorrow. He will send me the finished story tomorrow that we've been working on.
I just want to let everybody know right off the top. Okay, so John's book is available in the comments or the description, and so is mine. And Crom the Destroyer, we're moving with speed now. My inker's going like lightning, and the colorist is starting to finish off what he's doing now and coming back to the pages of Crom the Destroyer on Monday. I got to get the script over to Joe from everybody knows Joe from Michael Bancroft's Late Night with Comicsgate. Joe's a good guy. We're doing the editing together, and after that, our letterer is already set up and ready to go as well. So we're moving with speed, everybody, and it's getting to you. It's going to get to you.
Oh, good. Yeah, I know some behind the scenes setbacks you have. It's not my information to tell, but yeah, anything that could go wrong went wrong, and I'm so happy that you're still positive and excited to make comics.
Oh, it's a beautiful book. I mean, of all the books that I've worked on, it is the most difficult, and I've had the most problems with it. Partly me, I'll say mostly me, probably, but it is the most beautiful book that I have ever worked on. That's why I brought Joe in as like, I don't want to screw this up. I need a second editor to look at this entire thing.
Yeah, you can't edit yourself, because your mind fills in the mistakes. It just fills in the gaps. And anybody who wants to know, you could get it right here on Fund My Comic. It's going to be up forever, right? So even after it gets delivered, I know that, and I don't blame people. There's people that wait till after a comic gets delivered before they order it. I understand that thinking. Unfortunately, I only print 50% more than the campaign, so you risk not getting it if you wait. But
you're just not going to get first printing. That's all. Sorry, guys. If you don't get first printing, when it shoots up to $500,000 in about 10 years, you're out of luck then.
Yep. Yeah. Get the first appearance of the Patriarch while I'm still selling first prints at cover price. And speaking of which, you could get the Christmas special. It's done. It's the lettering just has to be done. The lettering takes a week. But it's the coloring's done, the art's done. Renzo is just doing some tweaks with Aaron Sparrows on Doomface, and then he's going to go back and he's going to finish Patriarch #1, and then he's going to draw the second Mary Sue story. So that means I'll have Christmas special, Patriarch #1, and Heroic Tales 3 done fast, and then we're going to work on the Chuck Dixon story. The script is complete. I just didn't see the complete script yet. I'm so nervous. I wonder how much, because we went back and forth writing it. And for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, Chuck Dixon, yes, that's Chuck Dixon. For whatever reason, he took a liking to me. I know maybe he doesn't have mental health coverage as a comic book artist. He took a liking to me. I pitched him an idea. He liked it. And it's funny because he doesn't say yes or no. He just doesn't reply, or a week later, he sends you half a script that says you're on now. So I did some writing, sent it back to him, and then he just said, I tweaked it a bit. I'll send you the finished script tomorrow. Tweak it some more. It's finished tomorrow. I wonder how much of my stuff got thrown out.
He's a good man to trust, though.
Right. I don't know if you've ever watched the Chappelle Show, but they had a skit called "When Keeping It Real Goes Wrong." It's like when you stand up for yourself and it totally backfires when you should have just went with the flow. Like I could just, no, Chuck, this isn't what I wanted to do. And then we fight. Next thing you know, he's like, fine, keep it. I'm out. No, I'm sorry. You know what I mean? So we'll see.
I was thinking to Chuck this last week because this new movie came out, which I didn't see, but it's about this guy in Europe. He's basically going around. He's a hitman.
Yeah.
And I can't remember what's the name of it, but it made me think of Chuck's book with Private American.
Oh, that Private American is Mike Barron. Chuck's book is Levon Cade, The Working Man.
That's it. I'm sorry. I'm mixing up my comic.
Yeah,
Writers.
you're mixing up your vigilantes.
Yep.
Yeah, this is called Citizen Vigilante.
That's it. Yep. So
Yeah.
I was just we were talking about whether or not anybody. Oh, we got a couple of people in the comments here. We're talking about any kind of through idea of what to talk about tonight, and I was just going to talk about big comic events, just because I had somebody on Twitter talking to me about how Secret Wars was the last thing they read from Marvel because they felt it was the beginning of the end for Marvel, and I thought to myself,
the second Secret Wars.
Second Secret Wars, yeah.
That was my end point at Marvel too, because it had a little parentheses. It says Marvel Comic Universe 1961 2015, and I was like, oh cool. For a crazy anal retentive like myself, that was a good end brackets, because Doctor Doom remade the universe, so that was their kind of backdoor way of rebooting everything. So it was a good stepping off point for me.
No, that was good. There's a lot of, well, to me, I always say that Heroes Reborn again was it in itself an event when they tried to make it an event. Everybody tries to argue with me is like, oh no, they never meant to be a reboot of the entire universe. They just meant it to be an event, and then they're going to redo the entire thing. No, I remember when it came out.
It was going to be the status quo going forward. The problem is they hired the Image guys were a bunch of immature, not ready for primetime players. They had talent, but they didn't have the what's the word?
I won't give you the word, John, because I don't know what you're talking about, but they didn't have the editorial know-how to do anything.
When you take work seriously, work ethic, they didn't have the work ethic.
I just say they didn't have, like you and I were just talking about the fact that you can't edit yourself. These guys are so big, and it's like, I don't need anybody to edit me. Yeah, you do. Right. Sorry.
Like writers, they didn't have the work ethic, and they were immature, and it fell apart within a year.
Oh, it fell apart within, like, as far as I was concerned as a reader, it fell apart within 3 issues.
Well, I mean, they abandoned it. Like I think Fantastic Four lasted 11 issues. But like you said, those were supposed to be the new going forward. I remember that distinctly. It was the new going forward. And then afterwards, like, oh, it's never going to be the new going forward. Yeah, as soon as you work with the Image guys, you knew it was. Yeah, but like the Captain America one, Chuck Dixon was hired to be the writer. And when he saw Rob Liefeld's art, he said, take my name off this. So that was dead from day one. And it is truly one of the worst comics ever made.
Oh, I agree. As one of, I don't know if I got everything that came out when they rebooted the entire thing, but my big thing was the slap in the face of the fact that all of my comics were now worth nothing as history for the Marvel universe. That's what I thought was the biggest slap in the face.
Well, that's what I mean. I'm a continuity guy. That's why I have a difficult time with DC, because it's just, they're just going to reboot it and restart in a couple of years. Like, well, I know it's a stupid example, but what about TNT and Dan the Dynamite? Like, where are they? Do they still exist? Do they not exist? What about the original Harley Quinn? Did she marry the Green Lantern? Oh, he's gay now. So I don't want to. I like memorizing all the little details. Just imagine if Tolkien rebooted his universe every once in a while. I'd have to memorize these kings of Numenor and everything. I don't, or the new Revised Bible. I don't want to memorize all that stuff all over again. And I like knowing that stuff. It's comforting knowing these genealogies and, so every time DC reboots, I just I got once for the Crisis on Infinite Earths, and I talk about that ad nauseum that they half-assed it. They should have truly started issue 1 on everything and then not retreaded the past. But what do I know?
Well, I was of the opposite mentality for everybody who thinks that Crisis really destroyed everything. I think it was Zero Hour that tried to reverse Crisis or half reverse it. That was the nail in the coffin for me. It was like, okay, I saw what you were trying to do with Crisis on Infinite Earths, and then you want to undo it so that it is a multi-universe again. It doesn't work. I'm sorry. You just shot yourself in the foot.
Yeah, I agree. That's and then they did Hyper Time, And then there's a whole bunch of reboots. Then there was the New 52. Then there was the Heroes Reborn, not Heroes Reborn, but whatever. So I was just like, I don't know the continuity anymore. Like I like the Crisis on Infinite Earths. I thought it was a cool idea. It was exciting. It was fun, but and it worked as far as getting more sales. But it failed. It did not make anything simpler. It just started a precedent that whenever things got in a slump, just restart. And I thought that was a bad precedent. I'm going to go down the chat. Just read the chat. Say hello to everybody.
Sure, let's go.
Before we get too far in the weeds. We got Zach Tan over here having a blessed day. Yep. I worked, came home, got White Castle. What else do you want? RJ, you having a blessed day?
Actually, I'm having a great day. It's better than I've had in a long time.
That's good. That's good. Backstabber says, anyone here to chat? Yeah, we're all here to chat. Hope you have. He's saying it on both channels. Oh, that's cool. The 4 types of government: anarchy, tyranny, arachno-tyranny, and ordered liberty. Like democracy is the worst form of government, except for all the others that have been tried. The West has a lot of arachno-tyranny, selective enforcement of law. Yeah, that's what gets me mad. 2-tier justice, selective enforcement. Still excited for Crom. There you go. Once was cool says hello. Harley Quinn married Green Lantern. Which one? The original Harley Quinn, the one that was the mother of Obsidian and Jade, the one that came out in the late 40s, early 50s. Yeah, the original Harley Quinn. And then there was a second Harley Quinn that was the Joker's daughter. And then there's the Harley Quinn that we know now. There might be another one in there someplace. So which events do you want to talk about?
Well, we've covered a couple of good ones, but there was a bunch of in-between things that I really, again, I hate being negative, but I'm going to be negative about this. A lot of the Marvel events were they're all cash grabs in one way or another, but the ones that really ticked me off were the annual events where they did for Marvel in the summers of late 80s, early 90s, right? So you had to buy every oversized annual for every issue in order to follow the through line of the story, and it was just horrific. You wouldn't even get the normal artists, of course, to draw it, and it would be like, why am I buying this? It's ridiculous.
I remember in the annuals they had Atlantis Attacks.
Yep.
And then one of them was the Evolutionary War.
Yes.
And then one of them was I forget what it was called, but it was all the spacefaring races decided to use Earth as a prison. Do you remember that one?
I don't remember that one, no.
Yeah, what the hell was it called? That's going to drive me nuts. But and then I think there was one Inhumans one. But
well, I don't know. Well, I mean, the Evolutionary one did include a lot of the Inhumans.
Okay, maybe I'm conflating. Yeah, the Inhumans had a big part of the Evolutionary War.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Serpent Crown. Was that
there was the Serpent, that was still the Evolutionary War, right?
Yeah, it might have been.
Yeah. But they to me were less intrusive than the ones that went through the mainstream comics, because it was the annuals, so you just got the annuals. And if you didn't buy the annuals, it didn't bother the main story. But I hated when you had and supposedly the writers hated it too, when they had a multi-issue arc, and then all of a sudden they just had to insert.
I have to say, one time, well, a couple of times they did it right with events like that. Inferno was handled well by a lot of different people. Anna Senti was on Daredevil, and she incorporated the Inferno storyline into her book seamlessly, I would say. And that was my real jumping on point for Daredevil, because before that, my brother bought Daredevil sporadically, back from the time of Frank Miller. And he had a lot of issues, but I'm the one who, after that issue for Inferno, that was a tie-in to the main event with the X-Men books, I bought Daredevil almost right up until every issue until Joe Quesada, basically.
Yeah, Daredevil's, I don't know. That was a lesser known comic. It was like a cult comic, but it was lesser known, at least in my neighborhood. Of course you had Avengers and X-Men and all that stuff, but the X-Men, we were talking about maybe that now I'm getting too many ideas and I'm talking too fast, but what I liked about Marvel is Marvel had little corners of the Marvel universe that had their own flavor. The X-Men existed in their corner, and very rarely did they mess with the Avengers or the Fantastic Four. Then you had, Daredevil kind of interacted with Iron Fist and maybe Spider-Man once in a while, and sometimes, Master of Kung Fu. The Defenders were this weird little section that barely interacted with anybody else except sometimes Doctor Strange. And then Doctor Strange very rarely interacted, and then there was Avengers class heroes that, Spider-Man, Daredevil, Moon Knight, these weren't Avengers, and then the Fantastic Four, of course, was the flagship Marvel comic. And then the Quesada years came and Michael Bendis made everybody an Avenger. And I thought it like knocked down all the shrubberies and little fences in the Marvel universe. And now it's just one big neighborhood. And I feel like you pick up any Marvel comic, you pick it up any Marvel comic. You know what I mean? Like Daredevil had its own flavor, it had its own voice, and then you picked up Doctor Strange, it had its own, it might as well have been his own universe. Now it's just Marvel. Here you go. Here's Marvel comic. Here's Marvel comic. Marvel comic subset Avenger. Marvel comic subset Fantastic Four. What do you think about that?
I agree to some extent. I think that they did really well in separating the editorial from Marvel when they had a consistent and a steady editor-in-chief. But when they separated the entire thing into 4 or 5 editors-in-chiefs for Marvel, and each one of them had their own little fiefdom that they were controlling, I thought that was going too far. And then you started to get a lot of stuff. That's where you got the first real heavy push for progressive comics through, what the heck is her name? I can't even remember off the top of my head now anymore, but she basically inserted the storyline into Hulk when she was in control of it as editor-in-chief. What's that?
Joe Duffy?
No, it wasn't Joe Duffy. I'll probably think of the name before the end of the which was funny because when I interviewed Chuck, I asked him about her because he worked with her. And he was like, and Chuck is very diplomatic. I think whether or not he agreed with me, I couldn't tell. But
he worked with Kate Ironwood, who was a full-on communist, which I thought was funny that she ran a successful business. But how much of a communist can be when you run a successful business?
But it was during the time of the Midnight Suns, basically, when they tried to peel that off from the main universe. And he had just basically Midnight Suns was, I think, Marvel's attempt to try to do Vertigo.
You're not thinking of the Andersenti or Louis Simonson?
No. There was a period. I can't even remember names of the best of times. I used to have her name burned into my skull because I used to say it a dozen times a year during my normal
course,
videos.
Whenever we're talking live, I always forget the names too. Yeah.
And they did because I remember the Women of Marvel panel that interviewed her, and she said basically she was trained to be a subversive. What's that?
What's Samanat?
No, it's not Sanamanat. No, she interviewed her. She interviewed Innocenti too, but I like the Innocenti interview. But
Innocenti basically said, "Yeah, I learned men stuff so I could write for men."
Exactly.
Oh, you got yourself super chat over there on your channel, RJ.
TM Bailey, thank you very much. Thank you. The more I learn about modern day leftism, the more disturbed I am that they've glorified the 7 deadly sins as virtues while denouncing the 7 heavenly virtues as oppression to be overthrown. Yes, you're exactly right, Bailey. Listen to any video on my Saturday channel, and I'll talk about virtues and vices, but that's exactly what they've done. They've taken everything, and it's not just progressive people. It goes right back to well, you can go throughout history and find people doing that, but I always say the proximate shift in our culture was probably Nietzsche over the last 200 years, just because he took Augustine of Hippo and his idea of the will and he flipped it right upside down so that will it has no end but willing itself instead of the good, and that turned virtues into vices. So yeah, there's a lot there.
They took every virtue and because the progressives, they break the world up into binary. For people who everything's on a spectrum except the way they look at the world. You're either an oppressor or an oppressed. And anything virtuous, by definition, is oppressing you because, control your lust. Don't you oppress me. Don't you kink shame me. Pride. Don't be pride. No, I'm grateful of all of this stuff. Yeah, and then of course the sins now is liberation. Indulge in gluttony. Now they want to make people who are time blind. So people, chronically late people, it's a disability. Look at the freaking clock, you lazy bastard. I bet you I bet you when your favorite TV show is on. I bet you when the ice cream truck comes by. But you don't know when work starts. I'm calling BS on all that.
Bailey, another way to look at it is the fact that these people will call oppression anything that has objective reality to it, and the virtues have supreme objective reality to them because that's the way you actually get things done. So they want everything to be subjective, and that's why the subjectivity of vice, they flip it over to say that they become their virtues. They can't handle objectivity, certainly not the objectivity that tells them you have to do this thing if you wish to get ahead, or you wish to progress in life, or you wish to meet your ends, or anything like that. They only want subjectivity. So that's the tyranny of relativity bearing its ugly head once again.
So I Justice Alito of the Supreme Court, this guy was arguing, basically it's like, can you let men pretending to be women into women's spaces? And he just said, well, what's a woman? And the basic lesson, and the guy couldn't answer. He goes, how can you have a lawsuit and you don't know what a woman is? What is a man? So what are we arguing? This case has no merit. If there's no such thing as men and there's no such thing as women, then how can we argue this case? I thought that was brilliant. It's funny, just today, there's a guy that I work with. He's always asking me questions. And I stopped him and I said, let's define our terms. What are we talking about? What are we arguing about? And he said to me, why do you always do that? I said, because I don't know if me and you define things the same way. We're going to talk about, this. We got to know what this is before we can argue about it. I said, I've always been that way as a kid. Like, what do you mean by that? What do you mean by that? I used to drive people crazy. So this is the question that we argue. Well, I asked my wife this question yesterday. Maybe you could answer it. What is a religion? What is the definition of religion? Right? Don't. It's a very, very important part of people's life. And I'm not trying to do this as a catcher. I realize that we've been using this word, and we have freedom of religion. We have this. We have that. We, defending other people's. But what is define a religion?
Depends on, well, again, it depends on a lot of different ways that you could answer that question, John. I'll go top of my head. Okay. This is not me trying to summarize anybody that's much smarter than I am, but I would say it's a series of beliefs about your existence. It's a series of beliefs about your existence and existence in general, that you give a mental assent to. That's basically, I'm very going with basically a Catholic definition.
So the logic train that I'm following is, can I create a religion that controls your behavior?
Well, absolutely.
No, you're not part of my religion. Can my religion control your behavior?
Not unless you have external mechanisms of power.
Well, but that, like, oh no, you can't do that because my religion says we can't do that. And then what would you say? Like, RJ, you can't eat pork. I'm Jewish.
It's not part of my belief system. Yeah,
right,
I would just say it's not part of my belief system.
So does a religion imply that there has to be consent to be part of this religion?
On behalf of the individual, but not on behalf of anyone else besides the individual.
Right. So if a religion does not involve consent, to me, it's not a religion. You can't coerce people. You can't threaten people to be part of your religion.
Oh no, that's exactly what I mean by you have to give mental assent to these ideas.
Correct.
Which is basically because a lot of people think to themselves, well, I can't believe, I don't have it within me to believe. But believing is just giving mental assent to the idea that these things are true, nothing else. But that is a choice. That is a willful choice.
Now, what if I told you have to believe what I believe, or I'll kill you?
Well, I can pretend. It doesn't really matter. I can either defend and say no, or pretend and. But as long as I don't give true consent, like again, go with the Catholic version of this.
So is that a? I don't think that's a valid religious belief. I'm for, religion has to have. I'm beating around the bush. Islam is not a religion. Islam is not a religion. I've come to this conclusion 2 days ago, because if you insult Islam, you have to become Islamic. And if you leave Islam, it's apostates must be punished with death. This is violence and threats. This is terrorism. So I propose that Islam doesn't have First Amendment rights or freedom of religion rights, because it's not a religion. It's an idea. It's a system of ideas based on coercion and force and fear. If okay, I think I'm Islamic. No, I don't like it. I'm going to leave. No, now we have to kill you. That's once you remove people's consent, it's not a religion's supposed to be an individual choice. Like the reason why there's so many Christian, yeah, you're born into it, you raised it, you're 12 years old, you're baptized, or not baptized, confirmed or whatever. But if you're 20 years old and you tell your parents, I don't want to be Christian anymore, all they could do is pray. You know what I mean? The church isn't going to hunt you down. You know what I mean? That you're not going to be burnt at the stake. We all agree that those, burning heretics at the stake was wrong. So, and we all say that's bad, but Islam is bad. It says if you disagree with us, you have to believe what we believe. If you disagree with us, you have to believe what we believe. And if you try to leave, we'll kill you. That's not a valid religion. So
that's funny. I'll take this discussion for a little bit of a different direction. But okay. I'll say there have been certain, like being Catholic, okay? There's certainly been times in history where the Catholic Church has operated in a very way that John is trying to describe. But at the same time, there's also been a through line of the other exact way of thinking, because it's like the fact that I would say for let's I don't want to offend anybody, but probably will. For Protestants, if they do like a soup kitchen or things like that, there's a lot of them that will then start preaching to you and things like that. As a Catholic, you're not allowed to do that. You're not allowed to say, I'm giving you this charity in order for you to give me your time so that I can preach to you and convert you. It has to be because the belief is not supposed to work like that. And even in the Middle Ages, with the freeing of women from the whole dower system and all that, which the church did, it's the fact that, okay, these women have to give consent. This is part of the church, which is marriage is a sacrament, and they need to give actual consent for this sacrament to be true. So, there is a through line of, yes, for this religion, it involves actual willful consent. And again, there's historical evidence against that for many of actions, but the through line of the theology is exactly what you're talking about, John. You need to have consent in order to be one to actually follow this religious doctrine.
Right. I can't go around and start, my religion, comic bookism, and then threaten people and tell them if they're not part of my religion says that you must die. Nobody's going to accept that. There has to be consent. There has to be, I just laugh at all these people that defend it. Ah, man, things are going to get bad. I worry about the future. Coming into the stream late, but to add what you were saying a few years ago, I got into an argument with a non-religious guy who couldn't understand why Satanism was wrong. Do what thou wilt. Sounds okay. But if everybody does what they wilt, it doesn't. I've come to the conclusion that years ago, even as a young adult, that delayed gratification is a reward. When you stream TV shows, this is a stupid example, or I buy a full run of X-Men comics, 100 issues, and then I read them all. I don't retain any of that information. They're all one blur. I don't know the subtleties. I don't know the nuances. Like I can't, Will Partacio's run in the X-Men blurs into the Jim Lee run of the X-Men. I don't know who drew what. Art Adams drew that. I don't even remember. But delayed gratification. Once a month, I read these comics. I thought about them. those comics I retain. Satanism is just do whatever you want. Eat what you want, sleep whatever you want. Then everybody has STDs. Then nobody has any emotional connections. And that it's just a breakdown of society.
I will pile on to that way of thinking, John, and I'll connect it to comics because that's what we do here. But I was the exact same way with the delayed gratification for Conan the Barbarian from Marvel is exactly what you're talking about. Is exactly what happened to me. I was in university, so I bought Conan the Barbarian and the magazines from the time I was a kid, but it was never the biggest thing in my life. I really liked it, but only when it really hit all the marks. But in university, I remember first year university, I did the stupidest thing in the world because I went away to university. I had this big loan and there was a huge comic shop like 4 blocks away. And they decided, no, they had to close down while I was there at university. And I was buying so much comics from them that the guy said, okay, I'm going to give you first dibs on anything in our basement because these are all the back stock that we just didn't have room for the main floor. And this was a huge store. And I bought like 4 boxes worth of Savage Sword of Conan. And I never had the time to read them. For the longest time, I was like, I got to read those. I want to read those. Like, I got to make time to read those. And it was the anticipation of waiting so long to find the time to read those books that made me the rabid Conan the Barbarian fan that I am right now, is because it took me so long to carve out the time to actually read those books. It was the anticipation of getting to read those books that made the reading of them so much of a satisfaction that I just needed to learn more and read more and everything else.
Like, I think I told this story before, but as a kid, I saw the Star Wars movies. I was in 3rd grade when Star Wars came out, and they had the original 12 Star Wars toys, action figures, those 3-inch toys. And man, I had to get every one of them. And I was into Star Wars. I had to get every one. And I remember I would save up my lunch money, and I wasn't allowed to take the bus. I was in 3rd, 4th grade. And so I lied and I took the bus into the next town to the Play World. And I'd go in there and I'd be like, Chewbacca, 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 Chewbacca. Okay, Darth Vader. That's the one I'm looking for. Oh, man. And then I would have to rip off the packaging, stick the toy in my pocket, because if I came home with a new toy, my mom would be like, how'd you get it? And then she'd figure out I took the bus. And that was the end of that. So I'd sneak it into my house. Once I got it into my drawer, my mom didn't know what my toys were. And now I had Darth Vader. And it took me a couple of weeks to save up for the next one. Then I'd go into the store and, it was so much fun. It took me like a year to get all 12, Could you imagine if I just went on eBay, bought all 12? I'd be like, okay, now what? It was like a year of fun, the anticipation,
I think that's part of the reason why people love Star Wars so much, have fond memories of Star Wars. They hit upon an idea which they didn't even mean to hit upon when they didn't have enough toys to go around and they had to sell the empty boxes and
Right.
people were waiting for them to come in the mail.
I was one of them. It was a stand. It was an empty stand. I got a coupon in the mail that I bought it. I got a coupon in the mail. It had like a little picture of what it was, a mock-up of what it was going to look like. It sat on my desk. And then like a year later, I got it. I got the Boba Fett mailed to me. And contrary to Papa Week, the rocket never shot. I don't want to hear that. It never shot. But you remove all of limitations, you could do anything. Like, have you ever heard the word what is it? Ennui? That French word for boredom. That's what happens to these people. If you
Ennui.
Ennui, yeah. You could do whatever you want. You suffer from melancholy or ennui, look at all these rich people that you see in these period pieces. They're just sitting there whole home as like midgets are on fire juggling, you know what I mean? And then I just wish I was a poor farmer, then I'd be happy. Look, I never believed it until I taught preschool kids. When I was in college, I took a class, and part of the class was I had to work in a preschool class. And the old lady said to me, kids crave limitations. I was like, knock it off. Kids want to do whatever they want. And I learned the kids flourish under boundaries. It's cleanup time. It's time for lunch. It was like a soothing, they knew what to expect, and they had like controlled chaos. They could go berserk at this particular time, run around crazy, like little animals. And then they knew when they were going to eat. They knew when their mom was going to come pick them up. I've been a staunch believer. People need boundaries and rules and regulations, and the progressives hate all of that. Anything that tells them no is oppressive.
Yeah, let me tell you, John. So my family, like older generations of my family, they are very like so my mother like owned daycare and all this kind of stuff. So I was exposed to that from the time I was a kid. All this, literature around the house and all that kind of stuff. And the thing is that where I live right now, it's literally they will shut down. It's illegal to actually put the limitations on the children to get them to sit down and have an actual time to you can't tell them what to do. Basically, if they walk in and find you saying, okay, it's now time to sit down and learn how to write your name or learn how to color correctly or learn how to use a pair of scissors, they will shut the place down. The government will shut the place down. It's like, this is the most ridiculous thing in the world. And this is why kids are so stupid today, because they're allowing them basically to have free reign to do anything they want to do. There's no limitations, and you're producing the stupidest generation in the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Art through adversary. We all heard that. What we hear, we were talking about Star Wars. We heard about George Lucas's original plans for Star Wars. What was it? Han Solo was going to be 80 feet tall, and C-3PO was going to be a used car salesman who sold, and it was just the limitations. No, we don't have the budget for all that stuff. It was like sandpaper, and it made a better movie. All of these crazy ideas that they said no to, and then we have the prequels when nobody said no to George Lucas, and look how bad they were. And then we got the sequels that are a whole other ball of wax, but that's just, let's subvert expectations. It's Star Wars. It's a kid's movie. Give us exactly what we want. What we got? Zach 10. Authority, loyalty, purity, care, fairness, and liberty. These moral institutions can be hijacked to justify a lot of immoral things. Yeah, but then they're not those things. Like if fairness can only mean fairness. Liberty can only mean liberty. Authority can mean a lot of things. But I even told him before, and I was a Christian, and he wouldn't even try to understand my point. Yeah, he's a Satanist. Yeah, you're the bad guy. You're the bad guy. I'm sure he's miserable now. I think you mean Islam is an ideology. Yeah, what did I say? I probably said the wrong word. I do that a lot. There's been a thorough line throughout the church history that each conversion has to be a free individual choice. But politics and power complicate things. The Great Awakening brought it into focus. Yeah. RJ, you told the story of Vikings. They took a vote and voted to become Christian. Was that you who told that story?
I remember that story. I don't know if I told it to you or not, but I might have mentioned it one time. But yeah, there was basically there was a lot of that going around at the time, where basically if the king converted, everybody else would convert, right? And basically, I don't remember exactly who it was off the top of my head, but they basically said this is where the power lies, so we're going with that. And the king decided, yeah, we'll go with that. And but I don't remember it being a vote off the top of my head. But yeah, that happened a lot throughout European history.
Where like these two, like the two high-ranking chieftains, they were like, because the island was or the village or whatever, they were at war, and the Christians were fighting the pagans, and the pagans were fighting the Christians, and it was getting bad. So they sat down and basically discussed and voted, and they're like, okay, we're Christian now. Like, we can't fight anymore. That's right. I gotta look it up. I don't know. I thought it was you. Rob Liefeld, religious superhero prophet, is interesting. Oh, yeah, that comic. It was like 5 issues, and then it got canceled, and they did another 5 issues. I remember that. I actually have all of those. Excuse me.
I am the same way. I own a lot more Rob Liefeld than I want to admit. How's that? Although I do have multiple copies of first appearance of Deadpool, which I hate, but it's worth like $700 to $1,000 right now. So
already, yeah. It's funny. I got a message. Do you want to sell? Oh, my copy of Tech Jacket #1. I was like, how did you know I had it? But I looked. I did a video of it years ago. But no, because then I'll have issue #2 and up, and I won't have #1. That'll drive me crazy. It's like the only way I'll sell it is if you want to buy the whole collection. because then I have nothing. I'd rather have nothing than an incomplete collection. Which brings my brother messaged me. My brother was into Ghost Rider, and he has the first 6 appearances of Johnny Blaze Ghost Rider, the Marvel Spotlight ones, and then Ghost Rider #1. And he's like, I want to sell these. So he looked it up online. I think the Ghost Rider #1, like the highest value is like $5,000, but that's like a CGC 10.10, you know what I mean? Or 10.0. So I put it online and somebody offered him $1,000. He's like, no. I'm like, that's the best you're gonna get, dude. It's not CGC'd, it's not in the mint condition, but whatever. But you know what I mean? Do you ever somebody wants to sell their comics? I had a kid came up to me, he had a Justice League #1. I said, I'll buy that off you. I was like, how much? I was like, I'll give you $1,000 for it. And he's like, my father thinks you're trying to steal from me. This is worth $16,000. I said, okay. I knew that was going to happen. Tell your father, did he get it CGC'd? Is it a 9.8? Because that's the one that's worth $16,000. That's raw, unslabbed, and nobody knows. So good luck. We haven't talked since because he thought I was trying to steal a comic from him. But whatever.
At the same time, John, I have to say, while I don't like that at all, I'll say this half-heartedly because my favorite comic store over the last 10 years, which shut down, did this, so I had to excuse it, but I hate it. I hate it when they just don't have the prices on the books.
Right.
And you take it up to the counter, it's like, oh, I'll price it now, going through whatever little app that I have, and it'll tell me what you owe me. It's like, no, I'm sorry. I want to go through the Longbox and figure out how much I owe you before I get to the counter.
Right. Yeah. Okay. Thanks for wasting my time. I brought this up. I waited for you to look it up in the Overstreet Guide. Yeah, I hate that too. I hate that. Like, you're the comic book store. You should know what you have, and you should if you know something's hot, you should run to the boxes, pull it out, and reprice it.
That's the problem. They have employees that don't even know anything about comics.
Right. What was this? At Walker was in the Kenner commercials. Some Star Wars fans call it. Yeah, the all-terrain. What was it? All-terrain something. Yeah, but they call it the AT or the AT. The Chicken Walker and the big one. I don't know. Star Wars is over. It was fun. 3 movies. Those were good.
That reminds me, I have to go fish out the because I'm getting all my VHS tapes back because I'm starting to watch them. Like, I have almost all. I didn't realize this, but I have almost all of the James Bond, right? But the Star Wars that I have were the ones that they sold as a package when they digitally enhanced them, but before they changed any of the scenes, basically saying this is the last chance you will get to have the original copies of them, even though they're digitally enhanced. Those are the ones I bought, and I still have them on VHS somewhere in a box.
Oh, cool. I remember going to see that in the movies because I saw all the Star Wars when they first came out, and then I went to the they redid them, cleaned up, but they did add scenes into it. That bothered me. But I heard that they're going to re-release the theatrical releases of the Star Wars movies in the theaters, and I say, go for it. A lot of people haven't seen them. I know that they cut them up on TV, and then when they released them on DVD, there's extra scenes and stuff. Like, there's kids that don't realize that Han killed Guido, before Guido even fired. I hate that. Jabba the Hutt was not in the theatrical release, and I still swear that I have memories of Star Wars that I haven't seen since I saw it in the movie theater. But that's probably my mind playing tricks on me. Does anybody know? Was there like a version with like extra scenes? I know that there's like deleted scenes of like him talking to Biggs and stuff like that. But there's a couple of scenes and I'm like, no. I remember one scene of them of Ben and Luke talking before going to Mos Eisley, like right around when he says this is a town full of scum and villainy. But I remember that scene being a lot longer with more dialogue. But maybe as an imaginative kid, I just imagined something. The guy was an atheist. He just saw the Christians were against his inherently as misunderstood victim. He's also there you go. edgy kids. I just get a kick out of I forget the guy's name, but he's a prominent Satanist, and now he's a Christian. He's like, I wasted my life.
That's funny because Rex, I talk about every once in a while. My friend who's a priest, he was telling me the story one time about when he was just a newly minted priest, so it would be about 20 years ago, and these people dragged their teenage kid, like 13 years old, into church week after week, and they wanted the priest to talk to him. And so he basically went through the whole everything's relative thing to try to get the kid to realize that if everything's relative, then nothing is wrong. And basically it got down to the point where he said, well, then that means the Nazis did nothing wrong. And the kids went, yeah, I guess so. And that's the state of the world for the last 20 years, if you ask me.
Yeah. It's funny. I had to unfollow Mike Gustovich on Facebook because he's a hardcore atheist, and it's just anti-Christian stuff. And he's like, I read, I'm smart, that's why I'm an atheist. And I just felt like saying, oh really? So you read Saint Augustine then? What do you think about Saint Augustine on this, blah 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 blah, all the stuff that you're always talking about? Like, oh, so you're not you never read Christian theology. You just think you just think you're smart. But I like Mike, but I don't want to fight with him. But I had to unfollow him before I got into a fight. Just a co-worker today, a girl, she said, this smug liberal college professor, it's some TikTok thing, and this guy goes, did you know that Socrates' teacher was Aspasia? They don't want to tell you that because the Christians don't want there to be strong. She's got like a thumbs up. So I had to comment. I said, Socrates' teacher was not Aspasia. I said Aspasia was the concubine for Pericles. I said she was very smart, but she wasn't Socrates' teacher. I said Socrates' teacher was Archaeolus, and his teacher was Anaxagoras. I said how this guy taught any Greek history is beyond me, but I said, he's just an anti-Christian. He's not a professor. So I'm waiting to go to work tomorrow and get into a fight with this girl electrician. But that's the danger of the internet. Somebody says something and that, selective bias. I don't believe anything. Like RJ, I watch your sermons on Saturday and I look up stuff. You know what I mean? I'm like,
well, that's partly why I did that video a couple of weeks ago about the document. And Sound Engraver, if you're watching this later on, Sound Engraver made a comment basically saying, I like your comments. I want you to actually comment on it, not just read something. But I said to myself, it's time for me to actually post some of the stuff, if I have the time, of all the things that I keep on referencing. And that's one of the things I reference, one of the documents I reference every once in a while about, I can go back 150 years and show you documentation about what subversion actually means for these people. So, I'm going to do that every once in a while to give those sort of founding documents to say, yes, I'm not pulling this out of my hat. So I have references and things like that. But I'm glad you do so, John. That's exactly what I need people to do, because I want to have a discussion. And I don't want to have a discussion about your unfounded beliefs that don't have any connection to reality. People look stuff up. Great.
People always, like in political discussions, I'm like, oh really? So what year are we talking about? The Republicans and the Democrats switched. When? What year did they switch? I said, I keep hearing that, but nobody tells me what. I said, so it's, then I always say like, oh, so Theodore Roosevelt was really a Democrat? And they're like, oh, FDR, he was a Democrat. Was he really a Republican? Okay, so it's after FDR. So Kennedy was a Democrat. Was he real? And I whittled them down, and I said, well, if the party switched then how did this happen in 1972? Blah blah blah. I said, I guess it's just logical to conclude that the switch never happened. That's just Democrats ashamed of their past and and trying to claim the good. I said, when did they switch? I said, did all of these people just change their names? I said, as far as I know, only one or two senators actually switched sides. But anyway, that's what I do. Whenever anybody makes an argument with me, I always ask them to define their terms. Give me a date, and I'm a pain in the ass apparently. Good morning, Ben, our voice actor. But like, I don't know, ask people to define their terms. What are we arguing about? What do you mean by that? What is liberty? All right, I'll talk about liberty, but we got to define what liberty is. Okay, what is oppression? What does it mean to be oppressed? Things like that. What did the Nazis believe? That's always a good one.
Okay, now that my mind has had a chance to calm down, to actually not think about what the name was, I remember what the name of the editor-in-chief was, because she was one of 4 or 5 that they had going at once, because they all had their own little fiefdoms in Marvel. It was Bobby Chase.
Bobby Chase, but I heard you mention her name a million times.
Yeah, it's like 1994 or something like that.
Yeah, I remember. Yes, Bobby Chase. That's right. I remember her. Remember Marvel used to put like little cartoon drawings of the people that worked there in the bulletins. I remember the drawing of her, and I always wanted to see what she looked like because they drew her really good. RJ, what you said reminds me of a thing I deal with on the art website. My old fan art keeps getting favored, but hardly everyone ever comments on it, even though I move on from that. Yeah, it's disheartening to have no comments sometimes. I remember I had a forum that we just took down because it was getting more and more expensive to maintain. It was just my role-playing friends, so it was like 10 members. And we'd play, and then that night I would write up the story, like a summary of the story, and then we would comment on it. And as we got older, there was less and less comments. And my friend Mike wrote this big, long post about the philosophy of his character and everything like that. And the comments were like, oh, yeah, I remember that adventure. That was fun. And he just never posted again because he thought he poured his heart out into it. And his comments were like, yeah, I like salted popcorn. Salted popcorn's better. It's like, what are you talking about? Yeah, so I understand. You want comments. I try to still respond to everybody who comments on my videos. I'm not big at all. So I still have the luxury of responding to everybody who says something on my videos. Yes, George changed the originals and the special editions. His ex-wife, who edited the original, said George disrespected her by doing that. Yeah, there comes a point where I know artists are like this. They want to tweak things, and not to get Matt Barr mad, but he gave somebody a cover, and then when he looked at it, he wanted it back and wanted to tweak it a little bit. That guy didn't want to wait and published it as is. But I think the person who creates the art is perhaps the most critical. But at some point, it is what it is, Do you suffer from that? You always constantly want to tweak?
I constantly want to tweak, but at the same time, I have enough to. I won't say I have 100% respect for my artists, because sometimes I change what they do. But I have a lot of respect for my artists in so much as if they change my storyline through a piece of art that is fundamentally different, and let's say I didn't realize it to begin with, or he's done now, so let's not worry about something that is going to be a minor point of the plot. I change the storyline in order to actually agree with the art. It's like I did in I had, what's his name, Elliot from Peru. I can't remember his last name off the top of my head. He was doing some art for Thomas Valiant #1, and I told him about how Disc's powers worked, and then he drew basically these things where they're like stalagmites that she's walking over top of, as if they were, like Scott Free's pads that he uses and things like that. And I thought to myself, okay, that's not exactly what I described to you, nor what I wanted, but I can work with that in order to make it something which she can use as an actual projectile, like she's teleporting these things in from different places and using them just to drop them from on high, things like that. So, but there's there's a part in Crom the Destroyer right now where there's a part of one panel and it's historically inaccurate beyond belief, and I'm just going to have to get the inker to change it.
Yeah, I've been pretty fortunate, without telling tales out of school. Marcus just submitted a page today for the public eye. And then he said he's always so nervous when he submits. And the only change I ever asked him to change was there was a line that made it difficult to, like a tangent.
Yeah.
I said that line needs to be removed. Other than that, it's a great page. But I think he tortures himself. And then with Renzo, I only twice did I ask him to change anything because I know because of the language difference. And when he does change things, it makes sense because he's more of a visual guy, you know what I mean? So I'm like, okay, yeah, that makes sense. That's more clear than what I described. So that's not a problem. But only twice did I ever actually like, like, oh man, we got to change this. And then I always forget that he works digitally, so he just removes a layer or inverts a layer. You know what I mean? Like he'll take the layer and turn it around, yeah, and like, it's 10.
I have some of Renzo's actual original art because he sent me a lot of the stuff that he said to me, I have all this stuff. Do you want some of it? Do you want any of it? I'm just going to throw it out. It's all for Thomas Valiant, right? So he actually will do the same thing on hard copies. Let's say he uses normal size Bristol board for a comic page and he does the comic page, and then he has to change something, and it's a fundamental change that is going to alter, let's say, one of 5 characters that are in this splash page. He will basically do a new page of just the character and do like a cut and paste onto the actual piece of board of comic page, and then scan the corrected page. So he does that not just digitally but also physically.
Oh, okay, yeah. I think he does everything for me digitally. I think I ask him to do covers on paper so I can buy them from him so I can get the covers. But other than that, I think he does everything digitally. Rex Blazer says, I tend to rarely look back at my old writings and art because if I do, I want to tweak it. Yeah. What's funny is I have like, I'm not even joking. I probably have like 8 years worth of scripts already written, and I still get an idea and I want to write, and I'm constantly, okay, this will go here first. And guys now are writing stories like the public eye that Marcus has one more page to draw. I looked at that script. I wrote that script like 2 years ago, so I get the art. I got to go look at the script because I don't remember. I can't possibly remember. And I'm looking at the script and I'm like, wow, this is good. You know what I mean? Like I'm pleasantly surprised, but it's too late to tweak it. The art is already done. But yeah, I have tweaked a few things, like a few scripts I gave to somebody. I know Marcus was on a page and he wasn't up to it yet. And I pulled the script back, tweaked it, and sent it back to him. But once the art, it's too expensive. I'm not paying for another page of art. But that just means you gotta be thinking about it. You gotta think about it. I forget who I said, but you gotta think, is this page worth the cost of an artist, of a colorist, of a letterer, of printing an extra page? Everything you gotta write economically. We can put as many pages as we want, but a 40-page book is expensive compared to a 24-page book. Did I lose you, RJ? Or did I just talk too much and you just said, I'm out of here? I think he's out of here. I scared away RJ. Oh, he's having trouble. I see his mic turning on and off. Maybe hunters found where Bigfoot lives.
Hello.
Yeah,
I'm having issues with my computer. Plus the fact I got a mosquito buzzing around my head. So if I suddenly drop the microphone, it's because I'm killing something.
I thought maybe hunters found out where Bigfoot lives.
I see. Well, I got attack dogs. Oh, it's funny. I was just out in a walk about 3 hours ago, and me and the fella that I was with were looking at the coy wolves as they were following us. Yeah.
Oh, Chuck Dixon. I meant to bring this up before when you talking about drones, but on Ask Chuck Dixon, it's like my favorite part of usually on Wednesdays. If you go to his YouTube channel, Ask Chuck Dixon, and write letters to him, and he answers them all. He talked about hidden worlds, and he says, with all this modern technology, is like, if you do a hidden world, does it have to be set in the past anymore? And I thought of you, because you're doing hidden worlds in the modern world. Like it all depends how you do it. Like a Wakanda, an entire nation. I think we can't really do that anymore, but you can do mystical hidden worlds.
The hidden worlds that I have, that's the fun thing about my hidden worlds is why Fade to Blue I think is so fun to write, because I don't have time travel, but I have hidden worlds. Basically, you have to get to them in a very specific way. It's sort of like old Celtic mythology, but at the same time will move differently in those worlds than they do in other places. So if you you have people there that still might be basically in the Middle Ages, because they haven't changed that much, because time is moving much slower for them than it is in the normal world. That's my take on the whole thing without using time travel.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. The Rip Van Winkle, right? You fall asleep and come back in the future and stuff. So if you go to a hidden world, is there hidden worlds where like time goes backwards, or is it just, you're in the hidden, like Narnia? You could grow up and then you come back and not too much time has passed.
Well, like I said, depends on, for me anyways. I used to love Logan's Run. So it's kind of the idea of going from, pod to pod from Logan's Run, right? It's like you're going from door to door from these hidden worlds. And it's more the fact that, excuse me, since time works differently in that, and well, I won't give too much away from the story, but the point is that I have a villain who's basically very long lived, and he discovers this idea of how to get to the other worlds and populates them, a couple of them, with people that he wants throughout the ages to continue to exist. And so it's like a cut-off world. So you have medieval people, and they're still medieval people because they were originally put in there in medieval times, and time moves differently there. So things like that.
I love that kind of stuff. Yeah. Rex Blazer says that he was the one that asked the question on Ask Chuck Dixon. So there you go. That's funny. That's funny. I was talking about his question while he's listening to us talk about his question. So I know you wanted to talk about comic book events, and I derailed it like I always do, talking about crazy stuff. So what was your favorite Marvel or DC event?
Well, I mean, I gotta say, favorite would most probably have to be Crisis on Infinite Earth, just because the George Perez books were just so amazing. Those were beautiful, and some of the tie-ins worked really well. I think the Blue Beetle tie-in was really well done, and a couple of the Superman issues that were going along with it. Legends wasn't too bad. Legends was when see, for Crisis on Infinite Earths, I never had a comic store at that time. I was just buying drugstore comics and all that kind of stuff. But when Legends came along, I was in a place where we actually had a comic shop. Legends was probably the first book, which is DC, from that I bought at a comic shop, and was able to then actually, pick and choose what I wanted out of the tie-ins for it. And there's some like the Batman, which was who was doing the Batman at the time? I can't remember off the top of my head. But the Batman tie-ins were good for Legends and stuff like that. So I think DC actually had much more of a handle on how to tie things in. Not that they always did it correctly, but they did it, I think, much better than Marvel did. Marvel had a really good marketing department, I'll just put it that way, in order to try to figure out how event books would actually sell the best. Whether or not it was actually good storytelling after a while from Secret Wars on, that's one way or another. But yeah, best would for me just be the George Perez story and art for Crisis on Infinite Earths.
Well, Crisis on Infinite Earth was hyped up so well, and we were all excited for it. To me, that will always be my favorite event. Secret Wars is number 2. But if you remember, before Secret Wars, before Crisis on Infinite Earths, there was a 3-issue Contest of Champions. Now, was that just a mini series, or was that an event? I don't know. It kind of just came out. Like, they didn't hype it up, or at least I don't remember it being hyped up, and it didn't cross over into the comics. But like, I thought it was an event because it was all the bigwigs at Marvel, in one comic. I thought it was so cool. And then they introduced a lot of new characters, but I really, really liked that. And then I thought, like, by the time we got to, like, I don't know, Millennium, if you remember that from DC, like, the event word was just overused. And it's like, don't do it every year. Wait until you got an idea that's worthy of an event. But I guess they sold well, and if it sells well, it's going to happen.
I think Invasion came after Millennium, and I didn't mind Invasion so much. I think that it had tie-ins with Legion and Legion of Superheroes and all that kind of stuff. So it was very much a Keith Giffen kind of let's take these kinds of worlds and throw everybody into them, which basically you had the invasion of the Dominators, I think it was, and the rest of them trying to take over.
That wasn't bad. That wasn't bad. But Millennium to me was the bottom of the barrel.
Yeah.
Like, everybody was secretly a manhunter. Lana Lang was a manhunter. Laurel Kent was a man. I just thought it was dumb.
Also, thinking about older versions of this, when they actually tried to do sort of mini tie-ins, like you're talking about Champions, but for DC, I always loved when you had the Justice Society and the Justice League, which they usually did, like, I think once a year they did a tie-in. So those
that
were
was one of my first DC comic books. Was I could picture the cover, and I think I finally tracked it down and bought a copy of it. But it was the Justice Society, and it had the, on one side you had all the floating heads with the name, the roster, and then so you had the Justice League over here, the Justice Society over here, and I just remember, like, seeing Starman and the original Green Lantern next to the original Flash, next to the modern versions, and I just thought these old characters, they just looks like so wonderfully old fashioned, and they just had so much, I don't know, coolness to them. Man, I fell in love. That, like, and everybody says, like, oh, comic book's got to be easily accessible. Man, one of my first Justice Leagues was a crossover with 30 characters. They're all fighting and talking and costumes. I figured it out. I'm sure I didn't get everything, but man, it was worth the work.
I agree, John. I love those books. That's why Thomas Valley #1. I did that exact thing for the inside cover. It showed the villains and the heroes. One side you had the floating heads of the heroes. One side you got the floating heads of the villains, and you got everybody's name there. And I've had Renzo do the same thing for Thomas Valley #2. We have an inside cover, which is basically an extra panel for the book itself, that you can place if you want to, in where it has, but you have the floating heads of everybody, so you can tell their names before you start. And I love that kind of thing.
Yeah, I'm doing that with giant size Punchline #1. I have a variant cover, and I told Renzo I want to do it like the old Justice League with the floating heads. So I'm trying to get an image of that comic, and I'll show you. It, whatever is, my computer takes forever.
All you gotta do is say just like RJ wants, right? Just
that?
like you did for RJ. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah. Come on. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I'll so Bill Williams is he makes a comic called Punchline.
Hello.
And he asked me to do a troubleshoot story. So that's one of the reasons. What's that?
I think we lost you just for a second. You digitized, or maybe
you lost me.
Just for a minute.
I don't know. Maybe it's because I was opening.
John's excitement overloaded the entire stream.
Am I back?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. Whenever I'm opening up my G drive so I could get this file, and I guess it overloaded my old computer. Yeah. But I'm trying to get this cover to show you exactly what I'm talking about. Yeah, but I don't know. I forgot what I was saying. Oh, we got Herodberg. How you doing? Hal Chat just heard about the frenzy over Burns elsewhere. Oh, I wanted to talk about that. Amazing but well deserved. Heather Antos couldn't slow it down one iota. Did you hear about this, RJ?
Just by reading basically thumbnails for YouTube videos and a couple of tweets. That's all I know about it. But yes, I've heard it.
Yeah. What happened was she apparently John Burns said something transphobic, which probably meant he said something that made sense with reality. And I think he said it like 20 years ago. And she conveniently forgot that John Byrne was like an early progressive. He made Marvel's first openly gay character. You know what I mean? So he is probably more on her side than not. But that's the problems with progressives, is, once there's one difference, you might as well be a Nazi. So anyway, I'm trying to find it. I guess I'll show this cover. But she's like, I can't believe they're releasing this during Pride Month. Don't buy it. Don't buy it. And then it turned out to be it sold so many copies that it sold out before it even went to the store. And and she said, "Who wants to?" A couple of years ago, they were talking about hire John Byrne, and she said nobody wants to see artwork from a 75-year-old man. Well, apparently, a lot of customers want to see artwork from a 75-year-old man because it's like the highest selling comic. What? So here, I don't know.
Question for everybody and for John. Just while we're talking about it, so is the square bound book correct? The John Byrne book?
Yeah.
Is it available like at bookstores?
Yeah, you could buy it at comic book stores. You could buy it at bookstores. Yeah. You see, I did the lineup over here. This is the undressed cover. I can't find the file with the finished cover, but here's my characters going down the line. They're facing off against this cosmic horror. I can't
go to the very bottom there for a second.
I'm sorry. I'll scroll to the very bottom.
Yeah. Who's the character? Oh, Starlet.
We got Starlet. She was like a movie star influencer turned superhero. King Fu. Everybody knows King Fu at this point. The metaphysician. He's my Doctor Strange character. Magnum. Just picture if Hulk and Magneto combined. That's what you get. Mary Sue. The Public Eye. The Colonel Strong and the Patriarch. And it's no secret that the Public Eye is my favorite character. I can't stop thinking about this character. Yeah, so that floating eyes, that's I got that from the Justice Society Justice League team up. But anyway, back to John Byrne. I'm excited. I ordered a Marvel comic for the first time since, brand new off the rack Marvel comic from the first time since 2015. John Byrne's one of my favorite artists. I got to look up who's the inker, because I think it was just pencils, right? And I think they hired a letterer to re-letter it, and I can't wait.
I'll have to go in. I don't even, it's been so long since I even been to town, John, that I'm going to have to go to the bookstore and see if I can order myself a copy.
Yeah, I'm getting a box tomorrow from the Discount Comic Book Service. I wonder if it's going to be in there.
But I have read the story before, so it'll be, for me, it'll be just the buying it for the art.
Yeah. Elsewhere. Yeah, John Byrne is like retired. I don't even know if he does commissions anymore, but apparently he doesn't need to work. And then he was just drawing basically fan fiction of X-Men. And I think it's continuing where he left off on the X-Men. So this is him, what he would have done had he never left the X-Men. So I guess like issue 1, it begins at 150 or whatever. I forget the exact number that he left. So that's what it is. So it's cutting out all of the Paul Smith and John Romita and Jim Lee and all that stuff, and it's just continuing there. And I can't wait, because that was my favorite part of the X-Men. So yeah, check it out. It's called X-Men Elsewhere. Wondering if I should adopt the floating heads thing. Yeah, that's up to you. I like it. It's an oldie Oldison thing. Me and RJ like it. So how's everything else? Anything else?
I was looking at your page, John. I have a question for you.
Sure.
This is inside baseball for everybody. I just want to talk to John about making comics. So first of all, I can't remember from your books that I've read, but when you put in sound effects, first of all, how liberally do you use them? Number two, who puts them in? Do you actually get either the artist or the letterer to put them in, or both? And do you give any free rein in their interpretation of it?
So when I write a script, on the first top of the, so I break down page 1, panel 1, RJ's sitting in his cave eating the flesh of a human. And then underneath it'll be like, RJ, this human tastes delicious, and then sound effect, man screaming, ah! So, Renzo will draw you eating the human flesh, and then Oscar will color it, and then Bill Williams, the letterer, will put in the word balloons and the sound effects. Now, every once in a while, I've changed my mind, but how sometimes the sound effects becomes part of the art?
Yes.
Then I'll see if Renzo could draw that. But I changed my mind a few times. But my letterer puts in the sound effects, and I pick them. And I'm always trying to come up with something, but I always end up with the same, like I don't know, some of the sound of like what does it sound when somebody's falling in the water, katoish, and things like that. So, and then Bill literally writes what the sound effect as I automatopoeia it.
It's funny. I wanted to ask the question because again, I'm going through the pages once again to do another edit for because usually I'm like you, I would include sound effects within the dialogue. So I have basically a little paragraph to describe panel, and then I have dialogue underneath, which is indented so the letterer can pick it out easily. Excuse me. But I include sound effects under dialogue basically, but sometimes the artist does put it in. So the thing about Crown the Destroyer, as I'm going through my last edit before I hand it off to another editor, is the thing that I always wanted it to be as much as possible like John Byrne, a continuation of the style of Marvel's Conan the Barbarian. And within their style, if you read things like Conan, I can't remember who wrote Barbarian Run. Anyways, they never use sound effects at all. It was
really?
It was forbidden. They wanted to distinguish it from normal Marvel comics by never using sound effects. But my artists for Nick, I'm not sure if Jim did this or not. It was just Nick. Sometimes Nick would put in his art basically a sound effect as if it was part of the panel or the panel itself. So I always found that the use of sound effects was, for the second edit anyways, was essential when you read something and the panel is not clear enough for it to automatically click in that what is going on. Therefore, you add a sound effect and it makes it more clear. I did that with the Thomas Valiant books. So I think I will do it again with Crown the Destroyer, even though, again, it will be breaking my own rule that I didn't want to do originally. But hey, things change.
I look at all writing, whether it's a caption box, a thought balloon, a word balloon, or a sound effect. Is this there to convey information that the art isn't conveying? If the art is conveying that information, then any word is not needed. Like I consider like the purest comic book would be like that silent issue of G.I. Joe with Snake Eyes. Everything is told without words. And then I almost feel the more words you use, the less efficient the comic book is. But like, I'm not one of these writers that I need to have all my words there because I wrote those panels. I described them. You know what I mean? That's my words turned into art. So my ego is satisfied. Hey, we got Brian Bow over here. Brian Bow is the wonderful artist, writer, creator, colorist, whatever you want about Wolf and Batsy. This guy did it. One of the longest running indie comics. He's been doing it in some form since like I think 2001, Brian. And just to and to show you that I've put my money where my mouth is, like I got everything Wolf and Batsy. I got his graphic novels right here. They're my next up on reading. I keep promising I'm going to read them, and then I keep buying more comics and putting them on top. But I'm a crazy person. But anyway,
Brian, I got a question for Brian.
Sure.
He's an artist, and he might know this as well. So for Watchmen, okay, so for Vertigo, they didn't use the superhero proportions that had been carved out for comic book superheroes since basically Tarzan and his original his run in the papers, which is probably in the 40s. They elongated the form of the superhero since that time, and then it came to Vertigo and they said, no, we're going back to original proportions of actual human beings in order to make it more realistic for Vertigo. Did they do the same thing with Watchmen? Because if they took out both sound effects and motion lines, that would be my next visual cue of I want to make this more like a nitty-gritty realistic book. But I don't know. Brian, do you know the answer to that?
Never thought of that. I'll have to figure it out. Did they take off? Yeah, because the average superhero was a head taller than the average human. Yeah, that was all in How to Draw Comics the Marvel way. But what does Brian say? He says the Watchmen didn't use sound effects, motion lines, or any of those cues. That's true. Yeah, good point. Watchmen was also drawn very realistic. Yeah, to the point. Yeah, I don't know. Matt, you got me. I got to look that up because, like, Night Owl didn't look particularly heroic. He was like paunchy, later on. Rorschach was kind of runty. So maybe you're right. Maybe the only one who was unrealistic was Dr. Manhattan, because he was, purposely unrealistic.
I never thought of that. That would be a very interesting way to do it. In order to distinguish between characters, use the different proportions for different characters. That would be very interesting book to read. I wonder if anyone has ever done that before.
Yeah, good. Now I got to do some research. I know like the Watchmen's getting Alan Moore and the Watchmen's getting some hate. And Alan Moore, stop making it hard for me to defend you. Come on, can you give me a break? Can you just shut your mouth for a little while? Dave Gibbons did normal figures. I gotta say, this is an unpopular opinion about the Watchmen. I thought everybody was ugly, even the women that like Silk Spectre, especially the older Silk Spectre. I thought they were like, is this a joke? Like, she looked ridiculous with that big like pink afro. I thought everybody was just ugly. But I guess that's just the Dave Gibbons style at the time.
Yeah, I thought it was purposely meant to be an ugly book.
Most reports of Bigfoot don't usually involve violence attacks on people, but maybe that's because those are the only ones we hear about. Yes, the violent attacks of Bigfoot. Bigfoot's smart enough, or RJ's smart enough not to leave any.
Along with my teleportation, I'm good.
There you go. I'll tell you, one of these heroic tales is going to explain why we don't see Bigfoot.
Yeah, can walk in and out of these other worlds. See, John?
Dave Gibbons doesn't really use much typical Marvel-style dynamic camera angles either. Yeah, and what was it, 9 panels per page or 6 panels per page? I'm forgetting now. Right? But yeah, it is funny because you ever see a page of script that Alan Moore gave to Gibbons? Man, the fact that Gibbons didn't go nuts and just quit. Like, each panel had like a full page of what needed to be in it. And I bet you Alan checked it and was like, no, you forgot the toothpick on the table. You know what I mean? But that was half the fun. Almost every page, almost every panel had like some sort of secret foreshadowing. I thought it was fun. Although I do admit the weakest part was the ending, the squid. I thought the movie had a better ending where they tied it all on Dr. Manhattan. Alan, I defend you, but the movie had a better ending. And I didn't have to read that 3 pages dry as F on owls. Did you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know what you're talking about.
If there was like a couple pages of prose at the end of every issue, and one of them was night owls, like treatise on nature and owls. And I read the whole thing waiting for the payoff, and I'm just like, oh man, this is just like a college dissertation level, discussion about owls. It was like, oh my god, it's so boring. And I could have done without the pirate stuff. There's actually a theory that Bigfoot could do predator-style cloaking or is an interdimensional being. All his reasons of why they're so loose. Get the heroic tales while I explain the nature of Bigfoot.
We'll go back to Robert E. Howard's stories, which basically Bigfoot and the Yetis are de-evolved human beings. Not that they were, non-evolved apes or semi-evolved apes. They were de-evolved human beings that went back to being so barbaric.
Right? We are not men. We are Devo. It's supposed to be men de-evolved. I love Gibbons' art and Watchmen. I'm being a little harsh, but I did love it. I thought it was innovative. I mean, I'm still one of the last holdouts that defends Alan Moore, even though he's making it harder and harder for me.
I'm going to cut in here and I say, Brian, I think I like your art actually better. I like your art better than Gibbons.
There you go. Do I hear a Thomas Valiant, Wolf, and Batsy team up in the future? I love Gibbons' art in The Watchmen, but I thought the whole intent was to make it look and feel realistic. Yes. Purposely undramatic, which ironically made the big dramatic moments feel more real. Yeah, I mean, I'm trying to remember what year was it? Was it 87 when it came out? Which put me in high school. And man, I loved every issue. I was excited about it. I thought it was important. I thought it was, I remember it was fun. I remember going to the comic book store every time it came out and like discussing it. Who was the bad guy? What was going on? And I remember being so proud of myself when I figured out a few things and then like being quiet when I was wrong about who is this. But I remember like one of the things early on, spoiler alerts for 40 45-year-old. I remember me and like my friends, we were like, no, Ozymandias is the bad guy. Ozymandias is the bad guy. And one of them said, wouldn't it be funny if when he was reaching for the poison pellet, he was really sticking a poison pellet down that guy's throat? And I was like, wow, do you think that's what, it was fun. It was fun. And that's what happened. And we were so proud of ourselves. We figured it out. He figured it out. I took credit afterwards, but he figured it out. It was fun. No other comic book was like worth the work. And man, like I reread, like every time a new issue came out, I reread the back issues to pick up the clues. Like I'd read the new issue, and then I'd go back and reread he foreshadowed this. And then if you remember, there was like an 11-month wait between the last issue, between issue 11 and issue 12. We kind of forget about that. But man, it was an event. It was fun. Oh, Brian Bowes says wow, I guess he's flawed at your compliment. Yep. And then he says 1986. 1986. See? Yep. One idea I had for my world was that Bigfoot and other cryptids and mythological creatures were intelligent, mortal, non-human races are descended from experiments by Mesopotamian goddess Tiamat. Well, now you just told the internet, and somebody's going to steal that idea and make a wonderful comic. That's why I'm always cagey about my ideas. I said I'm going to explain the nature of Bigfoot, but I didn't tell you the nature of Bigfoot.
Just to let you know, I'm pure superhero guy. That's why I'm not commenting a lot on John. I don't want to interrupt John's fun. He's having fun talking about the Watchmen, but I at that time was pure, unadulterated superhero schlock. That's what I wanted. I remember picking up Watchmen, reading it on the news or in the comic shop, and putting it back in the on the stand. I remember doing that for Wolf and Cub. I remember doing that for the Nam. I remember doing that for Cops. The Hill Street Blues one basically is like, nope, I just want superheroes. Thanks very much.
I mean, yeah, I wanted superheroes. I avoided Western comics, monster comics. Sorry, Brian. And I, sports for a little while. Those sports comics and manga came out, and I was excited, but it was like I had like a high point and a real low crash. I got all of those Wolf and Cubs and Maya the Psychic Girl and Macross 88 and all that stuff. I bought I think I have like the first 3 or 4 issues of all of them. The only one I'm mad at myself for not continuing is Lone Wolf and Cub. I thought was really good. I really enjoyed that. A few of them I ended up, a store went out of business and I got a bunch of them for like nickels. They were just giving them away. But I got the Nom #1 because it was such a big deal, but I didn't want war comics, Now
it's funny. I post, if anybody, my X handle is in my description anyways, if you're listening on my channel, but I post basically some comic panels or a comic page every day, at least one. I try to, and I get really good interaction with a lot of those panels and a lot of those pages. But I posted a entire page from Wolf and Cub with Frank Miller's art, I think it was, and like I got nothing. Like, nobody cared. Nobody commented. Nobody wanted to see it. Nobody liked it. It's like, wow, how times have changed. I mean, everybody is so gung-ho for John Byrne, George Perez, Alan Davis, just clean art, like Paul Smith. Everybody loves the clean art, and those ones that were the original origin point of the de-evolution of clean art. And I'm sorry, but Frank Miller is right up there with that. Nobody cares anymore. Nobody cares.
I just want. There's a guy, Torchbearer Studios. I know he's friends with Brian, but he just posted this the other day. He drew this and then dressed it up, and I find this amazing. I reposted it. I thought this was so good. You're going to get a kick out of this. Now, this is not a real Dragon magazine cover, but he made this. Isn't that gorgeous?
Oh, that's amazing.
Why isn't this guy not working in mainstream comics? Look at that. I'm going to make that bigger. But he just posted this yesterday. He said it was for his birthday. He drew something, then he colored it, and then he was like, I'm going to make a Dragon magazine cover. So I think here's his original drawing of it. Look at that. That is so good.
That's invoking the spirit of old D&D right there.
Yeah. Oh,
And again, if anybody is young enough to not remember Dragon Magazine, $3 for a magazine that was hefty was a big chunk of change back then.
yeah. I'm so mad because me and my friends, we got Dragon Magazine like religiously every month. But the thing was, like, one of us bought it. So like if I did, like between me and my 3 D&D friends, we had Dragon Magazine every month. And it became like a communal thing. And man, I think I only have like 2 issues left. And the thing, I know the guy who took them from me, he must have thrown them out decades ago. And oh man, and every once in a while, like I'll find Dragon magazines. You go to a comic book store, they got magazines for $1. I always buy Dragon magazines. I miss that magazine. Brian Bow says Torchbearer Studios is Stephen J. Miller. He and I were college roommates. Yeah, I didn't want to give away too much information. Yeah. If anybody's bought my Heroic Tales #2, I have a RJ and Me, like a comic strip, and I have an idea for I don't want to give it away, but I have an idea for a comic strip, but it was gonna be like a 1-panel comic strip. And then Brian said, "Oh, that's funny because Steve had the same idea years ago." So I was like, "Oh man!" So I contacted Steve and I was like, "Is it okay if I use this name?" He goes, "Yeah, go ahead." I said, "Well, you're drawing it, so you're going to draw these 1-page panel gags that So it's not that's going to be in Heroic Tales 3. It's not time, but so I'm going to ask Steve to. I got 1 gag, but I want to get like 5 of these, like a Far Side 1-panel gags. So he'll draw it. We used to draw comics together back then. He's working on a new comic called The Thug. Yeah, I can't wait. He's very talented. Being fair, in today's economy, a magazine being less than $3 is probably not cheap enough to. Yeah, Dragon magazine. How much do you think it would be? It would be $9, $10 today.
I think it would be like 15, honestly.
Yeah, but because that's why. Because comic books were 50 cents, so a $3 magazine once a month. Like we took turns buying it. I think we even like chipped in buying it, and it became the communal thing. Oh, did you get this? It's about orcs, and then we would all read it, and they would end up at Carl's house, and he must have had a stack of them. And man, did he didn't take care of his comic books. He didn't take care of his D&D books. He definitely didn't take care of the Dragon magazine books.
Okay, obscure Dragon magazine question for you, John, and you'd be the only one I think would actually remember this off the top of your head. So there was a comic that I think was published in Dragon magazine, if I remember correctly. It was sort of like they were space farers, and the main character was this woman with long curly hair, and she had like second maid was sort of like a gnoll, so like a dog-like character. Do you remember that at all from Dragon magazine?
The comics?
Yeah.
No, that doesn't sound familiar, but
I'll see if I can pull something up.
I always loved the comics in Dragon magazine. The one I always remember was now I'm putting myself on the spot because I said I always remember it. Now I can't remember the name, but it was a dragon, like a little dragon, and he was like with a group of adventurers, and it was a long continuing story. And I got Dragon magazine out of order because like we go to a hobby shop and we pick up an issue, and we found out it was like 18 months earlier. So I always read about it out of order, and that's one thing I always wanted to do is get all the Dragon magazines and read. Like, does anybody know? Did they take all of the comics of Dragon magazine and make like an omnibus of them and read them in order? A lot of them were just like a 1-panel gag, like a D&D gag. One of them was a continuing story, and I remember they had a cat, and they cast a spell on the cat, and it grew wings, and it started flying. I thought that was so freaking cool. And then they had what's the name? It was a little Wormy. That's it. Wormy the dragon.
I pulled something up, but I'm not entirely sure if this was it or not.
Oh, this is the cover to Star Frontiers.
Okay.
This was a role-playing game that was a science fiction version of D&D. And I will say this was Math, the role-playing game. Oh my God. The first version of I'll never forget. This was made by engineers for engineers. No, dumb normies like me. They had the stats. They went 1 to 12, but it was a 16. It was a base 16. We do math in base 10, but they used a base 16 system. So the numbers went up to 10, and then from 11 to 16, they used like Greek letters and stuff. I was like, you gotta be kidding me. And then when you wanted to travel from different planets, you actually had to do like a differential equation. And it, if your math was off, you travel. I was like, you gotta be kidding. In the second edition, they dubbed it down for guys like me. But I remember having a lot of fun playing this game. Yeah, this is Star Frontiers. But they advertised it a lot in D&D, and then they did articles about it in Dragon Magazine. So you probably saw it a lot in Dragon Magazine.
Okay. I thought it was a comic. I don't know. This might be what I was thinking of or not, but I can't think off the top of my head if that's exactly the picture.
Yeah,
I can remember.
That was fun, man. That brought back memories. Man, yeah. I remember it came with like prepackaged races, and then it gave you rules to make up your own races. But whenever we played, I was like, if you're gonna play Star Wars, RJ, Brian, you're in the chat. Anybody in the chat watching this, if you're gonna play a Dungeons and Dragons type game, you're gonna play Star Wars, the role playing game, which character or character type would you want to be? To me, there's only one answer, but I'm probably a crazy person.
What, Star Wars?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, character type, you just want to play a Jedi, would you not?
Nah, screw that. Too many rules. You want to be a smuggling pirate like Han Solo. Tell me he wasn't the coolest guy in the show. Bosk. Brian, okay, I'm wrong. Everybody's got a different answer. Brian wants to be a bounty hunter like Bosk. But I would want to be on the outer rim, smuggling, flying away from the cops, turn it into like a, cannonball run in space. Got a big alien. You got yourself a big alien sidekick flying around. Oh, my wife's messaging me. She's upstairs. She says, first off, when I was talking about Islam, she goes, you're going to get your channel nuked. And now she says she wants to be Jar Jar Binks. Ladies and gentlemen, I must make a special announcement here. My wife is the world's only Jar Jar Binks fan. So there you go. I live with a Jar Jar Binks fan.
Geez,
so I have to be nice. Whenever he comes up, I have to shut my mouth. But don't worry, I'll get it when I go upstairs after this.
This is going to drive me crazy. Now I'm going to have to go pull out boxes and find my Dragon magazines and all the other ones I have and flip through them and try and figure out whether it was Star Frontier or not.
That
was definitely Star Frontier that we were looking at, but whether or not it was the comic that I'm thinking of, there was like they did 3 panels or 4 panels every once in a while in it was either Dragon or there was another one that I have a bunch of issues from long ago. I can't remember what it was. Ugh.
I just Googled. Oh yeah. Okay. So all right, I'm going to bring up a screen. I just Googled. I can't believe that's an actual verb now, but I just Googled Dragon Magazine comic strips. So I remember this, the Phineas Treasury. This is the Adventures of Phineas, Fingers, and Fred and Charlie. These were like goofy mages. Then there was What's New with Phil Foglio, and this was like a man and a woman that were like explaining like goofy rules in Dungeons and Dragons. I always thought that was funny. And then I followed him. He made a comic book called Xenophile, and it was like, I don't want to say porn because there was a story, but it was like X-rated science fiction. Porn to me has like no redeeming social value. At the very least, it was innovative science fiction porn. Snarf Quest.
That's what I'm thinking of. I'm mixing the two in my head. I'm mixing Star Frontiers and Snarf Quest in my head.
Okay, well, glad we solved the mystery.
Because they both have like wavy-haired, curly-haired protagonists as the main character.
Yeah, but not. You got me curious about all the other ones. How do I get this to go away? Do I click on it again? Oh, there you go. There's a big picture of Snarf Quest. Yeah, man, I never would have thought of this again if you didn't bring that up. Wow, what a memory. What else we got? Oh, I guess I gotta go back. Yamara. I don't remember that one. Knights for the Round in Nodwick, live in Dorka, Zagna, the Order of the Stick. But there's so many others that are missing. I don't think all of these are in Dragon Magazine. I don't think that's an accurate list. I always wanted to play Star Frontiers. Yeah, it's fun. It's fun. I wish I still had all. My friend Jimmy, I think I did a couple of videos of Treasure Trove. He gave me stacks and stacks and stacks of role playing stuff, and I gave most of it to my new friends that I made out here. Yeah, I kept a few things. I keep wanting to talk about specific adventures of D&D, but you never played. For those of you watching this and you played Dungeons and Dragons, classic Dungeons, how many of you died in the Tomb of Annihilation? Did you stick your head into the sphere, the orb of annihilation inside the statue's mouth? I did. I also died at the Ghost Tower of Inverness, and I'm trying to remember, but there was a whole bunch of modules that I just lost character. Dungeons and Dragons, the original Gary Gygax Dungeons and Dragons would make kids cry today. They were designed to kill you. Like, there was almost no logic. Like, you got PSTD. You were like, I don't want to go in the dungeon, because everything was going to kill you. There was no logical sense, you know. And Sandy Peterson was on my channel, and he just said he's of the opinion of the dungeon is its own dimension, and it follows its own rules. It doesn't make sense. It's the dungeon dimension. And that really changed my opinions, because one of the things that happened is, after a while, I'm like, how is there a dragon down here in the level 9 in the little room? How does it breathe? What does it eat? You know, when does it go to the bathroom? Why are there orcs running around? Why doesn't it eat? There should be no monsters. But Sandy Peterson says it exists because it's its own dimension. You know, it follows its own rules.
First of all, I would disagree. But what does Sandy Peterson do?
Sandy Peterson, he created Doom, and he created Call of Cthulhu among Age of Empires, a bunch of Cthulhu Wars, a board. RJ, you got to come over and play Cthulhu Wars with me. Come out of
here would be my logical interpretation, John. So the dragon would turn into a very sexy woman and walk down into the dungeon without anybody touching her, and all of a sudden go into a small room. There you go. There's my logical.
Yeah, the dragon can shape change. Okay, you got me on that one. But what about the Neo Otagu? You know, or the carrion crawl. Well, I guess the carrion crawl.
They're garbage eaters, so you know.
They eat the dragon poop. It's funny because one of the last times we played a dungeon, I play Villains Vigilantes, but we played a fantasy game. In the main city where the characters ended up, their main base, they went underground, and they found that there was an underground economy, and there was like dwarves that ran the sewers, and they herded carrion crawlers and otagus that ate. So they had plumbing, and all of the waste went into this waste river directly into monsters, and those monsters had no reason to attack anybody because they were constantly felled.
I don't know. I would not want to sit on a toilet where you got ostrogoths and whatever else underneath you eating the crap. It's like I would not. They had like hooks for hands. I mean, like pads that had hooks on them. It's like, oh no, I'm not putting my posterior on that. No.
I'm not saying that didn't happen. The woman in Snarf Quest looks like Tika Whalen from the Dragonlance. Maybe she was a popular 70s fantasy film. Maybe. I don't know who you're talking about, but I got to look. I have the Dragonlance comics. They were better than I remember. I bought like the first 6, and now I got up to 20 right over here in this stack. And every time I buy new comics, I just put it on top. I got to put it upside down and flip them over and be fair.
Now that we're talking about it, I should put this shameless plug in here for anybody. There is basically what we're doing for comics. There's another fellow who's doing it for like a Dragon magazine kind of magazine. It's called Mad Scribe, and he is publishing the first pages for Crom the Destroyer. He did so in his last issue. I think we did the first 3 pages, and we're probably going to do the next 3 pages, which you can read online anyways, because I put them online, the first 11 pages, so everyone could see what they were buying. But you know, if you want something like a modern day indie comic, but for Dragon magazine, go check out Mad Scribe.
Yeah. Oh, I might as well give this, because RJ talked about how much he loves Brian Bau's artwork. So I guess I should show some Brian Bau's artwork. I just saw this because this was I was showing Torchbearers. This was in Torchbearers feed. Look at that. I love Brian Bau. It's no secret. I keep saying one of my most exciting days in comic books was when I got a package from Alterna, and it was Wolf and Batsy #1. I just got it cold. I just bought it. Anything from Alterna. I vaguely knew of Josh Howard, and there was T-Bird and Throttle, and then Horace H. Hoover, which I never heard of. Fabrizio Aiello's cover. And I was like, oh my God, like for one brief shining moment, Alterna was the most exciting thing in comic books. And like a comet, it disappeared into the night.
But the funny thing is, I just ran across, what was it on Twitter? I think Image is redoing the Wolfman and trying to put out comics like that. And it made me think of Brian. And it's like, you could ride this wave if it actually becomes popular.
Yeah. Brian, for those of you who don't know, I highly recommend Wolf and Batsy. Brian likes to draw sexy women and monsters. So there you go. What Sandy said about jeez, what he said about my mush mouth, Dungeon Dimension kind of reminds me of what Joe Quesada said about the logical problems with One More Day. It's magic. We don't have to explain it. Yeah, look how well that went. Marvel has never recovered from from that. Marvel has never recovered from that. You kicked out guys who are dentists, who are doctors, who are lawyers, who had disposable income, love Spider-Man. Some of these people probably collected Spider-Man since the early 70s, and they walked away from it. And instead, you got people with passing interests because it's the cool thing, and they, and then Marvel has to keep raising the prices to make it. They caused, I don't know. I could go on and on and on about what a stupid. I believe it's because wasn't Joe Quesada going through a horrible divorce, and then
if I remember, yep.
Look at all of the people that work for Marvel. They're all childless, unmarried losers, so they can't write a happy married guy. Like that's why they always made Reed Richards kind of creepy, But all the other guys, like all the married guys, they made they could write a married couple, but not Tom Brevoort and not those bunch of weirdos. The closest they got to being married was hiring Heather Antos, and look how well that worked out. I played D&D in the 8th grade, but quickly realized I loved it more for collecting the figurines and reading the monster manual than actually playing the game. Too many rules. See, I totally agree with you, Brian. First off, the books are awesome. I still peruse the books. I love all the books. And as far as too many rules, I think I told the story. RJ, stop me if I told the story before, but I had a friend, Jimmy. Matter of fact, we were just talking today. Kind of those friends that you don't talk for years, and then when you do, you're like, oh my God, blah, blah, blah. But he was, we were into punk rock and everything like that. Never read books. He's not a book reader. He's one of these hands-on kind of guys. Dungeons & Dragons was not his thing. And I always wanted him to play with us. But I always knew you only get people to play Dungeons & Dragons with you if they really want to, because there's nothing worse than somebody who's not into it playing with you. They just ruin the game. And I also had no girlfriends, no spectators. Dungeons & Dragons is not a spectator sport, because then you get a girl sitting in the corner like,
yeah, for like 6 hours, 8 hours.
Yeah. Are you done yet? Are you done yet? So you got to be playing, and you got to be into playing. So if you say to me, I'm not in the mood to play tonight, I never pursued it. But anyway, when he got a house upstate, and they would go swimming and scuba diving and motorboarding, all that out. He's an outdoorsy kind of guy. And then at night, upstate New York in the 80s, there was nothing to do. There was no electricity. You know what I mean? It was just pitch dark. So one of the kids up there said, "You want to play Dungeons & Dragons?" And he was like, my friend John's always getting me to play. There's nothing else to do. There's no TV. Let's play Dungeons. This is the time to play. So he did the #1 worst mistake in the world. He gave Jimmy the player's handbook and said, "Read this, and then tomorrow we'll make up characters." And Jimmy was like, "I got homework?" No, the way to get people to play Dungeons & Dragons is only the Dungeon Master knows all the rules. He's the only one that has to know the rules. I call it drip release. So RJ, you're playing with me. Brian, you're playing with me. What do you want to play? You can be a fighter, you can be a wizard, and everybody, you don't have to explain that. I want to be a wizard. Okay. And then I said, there's a little bit of rules. So you know what strength is, you know what intelligence is, and we're going to roll dice. Higher the number, the more powerful you are in that. So if you got an 18 strength, you're super strong. If you got a 1 strength, you're weak. And then, so you're going to roll dice and you're going to pick what you want to be. And usually by this point, people get a little excited. And then we just it's your turn to go. What do I do? You tell me what you do, and then I give you the rules as you do things. You don't need to know encumbrance rules. You don't need to know how far you can walk before you get tired. You know what I mean? You learn that as you play. And every time, maybe once every couple of turns, you learn a little bit of rules. And then the other thing I do is Brian's playing with me and my friend Jimmy, my other friend Jimmy, who just like me knows every rule. You sit next to Jimmy. I go, Jimmy, be Brian's coach. So Brian will be like, okay, we're going to roll initiative. Initiative determines how fast you go. You roll a 1 die 10 and your agility. Oh, okay. You know what I mean? And then my wife didn't want to play for a long time because she's like, she didn't want to be embarrassed. So she wanted to know all the rules. And I said, I'm not telling you all the rules. It's like, you want a little glass of water and then a tidal wave comes and hits you. You just give them a little bit of water and then you give them a little bit of water. And next thing you know, you're playing D&D. Trust me, I've been teaching D&D for 40 years. It's one of the things I'm pretty good at. I may not know how to make a comic book, but I can teach you how to play Dungeons & Dragons. So, Brian, you're giving me an opportunity to say, when I get my $100,000 stretch goal, I'm flying Brian to New York, and we're gonna play a role-playing game. He's gonna roll up Wolf and Batsy. RJ's gonna roll up Thomas Valiant. Renzo will be the patriarch, and I'm gonna run a game. We'll get Rini playing Fiendish, whatever character she wants. Fabrizio will be Horace H. Hoover. We'll have a star-studded cast of everybody sitting around the table. I'll record the whole thing. You better believe it. For $100,000, man, I'll put on the best D&D show you've ever seen. And better than that critical role.
Does John use Thaco charts or not?
What's that?
Do you still use Thaco charts?
Well, we're going to be playing my villains.
Oh, vigilantes. Oh, I see.
Vigilantes. But Thaco is 2-hit armor class 0, and it worked. All you needed to know what the hit armor class 0 was, and you just added the armor class. That was your number. Easy. Come on, guys. You kids today who they throw down cards because they're getting too stressed out. Did you see this new rule?
No.
They have trigger words. Oh, I don't like spiders, so we can't have spiders in my camp. If I found out, RJ, that you didn't like spiders, guess what you're fighting tomorrow?
It would be the entire campaign.
Right. Welcome
like
to
those half women, half spider things that were
you're gonna be fighting Lawless. Welcome to the lair of Lawless. You're fighting spiders.
Exactly.
Yeah. I know the sign's entitled, but I've offended nobody. Asked me to draw the new blood of the Wolfman comic. He's my favorite monster. How dare they? If I had power to do it, Brian, in a second, when I become editor-in-chief of Marvel Comics, Brian, you got Werewolf by Night. Nobody else can get Werewolf by Night by you. Whether you want it or not, you're getting it. Supergirl. Oh, Tony Grigo's here. Tony Grigo, one of my favorite people. He's with us on It's Clobbering Time on Friday night. It's good to see it. And he lives in one of my favorite towns. I'm not going to dox him, but let's just say, go get yourself a Frontier burrito with Tony. Supergirl crashed and burned at the box. It came out already? I didn't even know it came out already. I thought it was still like a week or two away. Wow.
I've seen reviews and they're not good.
Yeah, I thought it was all pre-reviews and stuff like that.
No. I've seen reviews from people who usually would give a pass to something like this, and no, they're not even giving it a pass.
Well, the biggest indicator that it was going to bomb was little girls weren't excited to see it. If you're making a Supergirl movie and little girls aren't excited to see it, you failed. Right? You failed. You're making a Wonder Woman movie and little girls aren't excited to see it, you failed. That's your one job. And I'm embarrassed because when I saw that girl in the original Superman movie or the last Superman movie, I said, okay, I'll buy that. And then she just went out of her way to be like annoying. You can't be annoying. Don't the studios know this by now? The Rachel Ziegler effect is real. I'm sorry, but like if you're headlining a multi-million-dollar Hollywood movie, they used to do it in the 40s. They had clauses. You need to behave. You need to keep out of, you know what I mean? You got to keep out of scandals. Just wave and smile and be pleasant. That's your job. You're a Hollywood movie star. Wave, smile, and be pleasant. I don't want to hear you politics. I don't want to hear.
No, John, that's domination of women's bodies and their spaces.
Yeah, well, that's when movies used to make $1 million. Maybe exactly. A little, like I said, a little self-restraint is actually pleasant. You know, a little what's the word? You know, I used a different word before. Tika Whalen is standing between Caravan and Rastlin and the Dragons of Spring drawing. If you want to see what type of fantasy woman I'm talking about, if you want to send me an image, that sounds cool. I love the art on old Dragon magazines. Tell RJ, you post them a lot. Tell me they aren't great.
I'll see if I think I know what he's talking about. I'll see if I pull one up myself.
Okay. Yeah, if you can find it, we'll bring it up. Truth be told, my drawing tendency is monsters, kaiju, sexy women, giant robots, superheroes, and classic pulp adventures. There you go. What else do you want? Half of that you got Brian Bow, and the other half, Brian, have you drawn giant robots? And I don't think I've ever seen Brian draw superheroes. I would be really, really interested in seeing a Superman or a Batman by Brian Bow. My guy friends hazed me even harder because I was a girl and I wanted to play. Oh, I didn't know you were a girl. Yeah, I just assume anybody watching me is a guy. Girls don't want to look at me, so hey, I got one girl fan. Thank you. My guy friends hazed me even harder because I was a girl and I wanted to play D&D with them. It's how I learned to be verbally dexterous. Cool. What did you play? Now I'm curious. What did you play?
There is two different ones. I'm not sure if this is the one he's talking about, but there are two different ones for. Let me see. There's where are we? Here we go. There's this character who has the more curly hair, and then there's this one here with wavy hair. I can't remember her name or off the top of my head. So those might be one of the ones he's talking about, but that's just my guess.
I love all those. Those are great. Those D&D. That's Gold Moon. Is Gold Moon, or the first one he showed was Gold Moon?
I think the first one was Gold Moon. She's a druid. If I remember correctly, but my memory's not that good.
Brian Bow says, my 8-year-old is really into Marvel, watching the movies, reading the old comics. She's barely interested in any of the female characters, but she loves Thor, Hulk, Spidey, and Iron Man. That is great. Yeah, Brian's got a young daughter that's reading all this stuff. Now, does she like them because of the actors, or does she just, you know what I mean? Like, I'd be interested if she likes any of the characters that weren't in a Marvel movie. I'm just curious. I'm always curious when I see that kind of stuff.
A couple of others. Where is she?
Yeah, but Brian sent pictures of his little girl reading like late 80s Marvel comics, and it just made me feel good. I drew giant robots every day from 2010 to 2014 when I worked on Transformers. No more need for it, but I do love to draw kaiju. That's Lorana. I guess that's the second woman. I love that you know all the names of these characters. The 1994 crossover of Dragons of Spring Dawning. Yeah. I bought a couple of modules, but for the most part, my friends bought modules and ran modules. When I was a D&D guy, I made up my own adventures. If classy to me, if you've seen Community, the Dungeons and Dragons episode, the first Dungeons and Dragons episode of Community is one of the best television episodes of all time. But that episode with Chevy Chase was excluded from the game. So, of course, he decided he was going to sabotage the game. So he bullied his way into playing, and they made him sit in another room because he was the bad guy. And then he went and got a nerd. He was rich, so he went and got some guy to buy all the modules. So he was reading the modules as he was playing the modules, so he knew what was going on. And that always bothered me. You know what I mean? Like I didn't want my players to know stuff. Like, you know, so I made up my own gods, made up my own maps. So they only knew what they experienced and learned, or, you know, information that they were born into, if that makes sense. But like, you know, I wasn't going to have a story set in Lankbar, and they knew more because they read more of the Grey Mouser and Faf books than I did. No, that's not the way it is, John. I hated that. So I made up my own.
I got a deep lore question for the people who know D&D and modules. Shard of Spring, was that an actual module, or was it simply the computer game that D&D put out for, I think it was like Commodore 64? Because I remember playing Shard of Spring.
I don't know what you're talking about. Back when I was with my ex, I played a Dragonborn paladin who loves the ladies. Haven't touched that in a few. So a Dragonborn, is that like a human dragon hybrid? I was with the classic races. All you kids and your Kenders and Devilkin, you get off my lawn. Hey, Matt's here. How you doing, Matt? Just talking about your nobody. I say this from my heart. Nobody draws New York City like Matt Barr and Frank Miller. Those are the two best New York City artists ever. Get Rock and Roll Ninja 1. My favorite character was the city itself. That's Tanis, Hef Elvin, Gold, Godboot, and Sturm Brighthand. I'll take your word for it. I love that you know these characters. And Brian saying hello to Matt. This is fun. All the D&D stuff. I'm trying to look. I know I got. I thought I had my stack of D&D books over there. Figures I put them away.
So just let everybody know, I did play the modules for D&D for early computer gaming. Again, Shadow Spring would be one. We're talking like Commodore 64. So, very, and I think it's like Warriors of Kryn and Curse of the Azir Bonds and all these kinds of things. These are what I would call modules for the different D&D and Dragonlance that I would play. And I always had my brother hovering over my shoulder or him hovering over mine, one or the other, when we were playing that, because he knew all the D&D rules.
Yeah,
he was John. He was the John version of me, because he was the dungeon master for his group.
Classy to me. Do you ever DM, and what do you think about that? Like, if you get players, like, do you need? I don't think the players need to know all the rules. It's because Dungeons & Dragons to me was never complete. Like, there was always another rule. It's something that always needed tweaking. Like, that's why I like Villains Vigilantes. I think that's why it didn't sell too well, because it was just a $5 rule book, and that's all you needed. Dungeons & Dragons was like a drug habit. Every month you had to buy a supplement. You had to buy more and more and more and more. Like Warhammer. You're never done with Warhammer. Fritz Lieber actually Fat for the Grey Master has a role-playing game with his friend in the late 30s. Wow, he's that old? Is he? He's not still alive. Or his late 30s? Wow, a role-playing game. That is interesting. Because I know he got really into D&D. Like, he was very, very into the D&D made his books more popular. That's how I found out about him. Yeah, Dragonborn are basically humanoid dragons without wings or tails, transplanted from one world to another.
Okay, I have this question for Classy. Is it classy to me? Because I would read a classy tome. I don't know. That's just me. I'm
it's a classy tome. She's a gnome sorceress over here, RJ. She ain't gonna use any old tome. She's gonna use a classy tome. In D&D, I played a human bard. I'm sorry, I hate bards. A dwarven fighter. There you go, a dwarven fighter, and a gnomish sorceress. So many others, but my cat decided to kick my keyboard again. Yeah, I was going to say I have an irrational hatred for bards, but that's not true. I have a rational hatred for bards.
I agree with John, just because I played so much Ultima and they had the class of Shepherd, and I hated the class of Shepherd. It's like you had to have one for the virtue of humility. I was like, oh, you're the most useless character in the world.
We're going to go into the dungeon of the evil Lich Lord. Does anybody know how to play a mandolin? We're going to sneak in, and then you meet the evil Lich Lord. And what does the bard do? I try to seduce it. It's like, please do that. Play a bard in my game and try to seduce the monsters. You're going to die first. And then I'm not letting you roll up another character, and you can't go home. You got to sit there in your own shame for the next 4 hours while the dwarven.
I take it John never bought the sexy extension for D&D and played that.
There is one? Jeez, I didn't even know about it.
There is one, John. You don't want to. You don't even want to look into it.
Because I stopped at second edition. Second edition was the last. I still have. If ever I want to play D&D again, I'm going to break out second edition. That's why I have to laugh at all these people. D&D is dead. I'm never playing again. Like, you still own those books. You could still play. Remember all that fun that you had with those 6-month-long campaigns? You could still do that. Those books still exist. There's nothing wrong with the second edition. There's no law that says you have to play the current edition. I heard that there's people who still use that red box set, first edition. Dungeons & Dragons, not even Advanced Dungeons & Dragons.
And the great thing is, well, for me anyways, I've found people like bookstores, old bookstores will have old D&D books, and they're just giving them away. Basically, it's like a couple of dollars. Here, have some old ratty D&D books. I'm like, sure, no problem.
What's it called? The sexy supplement?
I can't remember, John. It's like, oh, for the love of Pete, John. I don't want to look it up. It's so horrible.
The sexy supplement. I'm afraid. I'm doing it on my phone because I'm afraid of what's going to come up.
It's got these weird rules where you go into the dungeon and you can have characters that have to regain their hit points through having intimate relations, and it's like, this makes zero sense. How are you gonna yeah, you're gonna do this in a dungeon?
Nothing comes up. I don't know. It's classy to me.
You talk. I'll go look for it, John. I'll
go look for it. But I do know, classy to me. I always wanted to try. Well, I take this back. When I first saw Starjammers, I hated it, and I thought it broke the game. Dungeons & Dragons is supposed to be like some sort of medieval, replication. Once you had flying spaceships that went to planets, to me that was dangerously crossing the line of science fiction, and I refused to buy it. Now, I kind of want to get a Starjammers, and just because I every once in a while I do buy a Dungeons & Dragons book just to read the rules or check out the monsters. Like Brian said, I like the art, but I haven't gotten anything like the farthest I've gotten is third edition. I've never gotten anything past third edition, but I'm curious to get Starjammers to see if there's anything interesting in that. I did DM a few times. There was hazing and trying to take advantage of the noob dungeon master. I tried looking at the rule books, experimenting with them. I somehow made Elder Shades. Oops. Yeah, that's one thing I won't tolerate is like, you going to pressure me to get what you want. Okay. Like Sandy Peterson told a story where he was like, I want to play a gold dragon. I want to role play a gold dragon. I want that to be my character. So Sandy was like, okay, you're a gold dragon. And then the guy's like, oh, gold dragons can generate 3 wishes a day. Okay. And then, okay, I wish for this. I wish for this. Okay. And then he said after like halfway through the session, he realized there was no tension. There was nothing to do. He just got everything, and it was no fun. I remember playing a Village Vigilantes character. My friend made up his own character back in college, and he made up the most powerful character, and he ended up after 3 sessions like, this character's no fun. I said, now you got it. So yeah, like, you want to pressure me? Okay, you got everything. Congratulations. It's no fun. Like, the thing about Dungeons & Dragons is it's risk. Not the board game Risk, but it's risk. It's possibilities, probabilities. And once you've solved all the probabilities and there are no problems, it's just guarantees. It's not fun anymore. And I find that that's what modern D&D has come to, like no death adventures and stuff like that. That's just why even play? Why play a game? Okay, RJ sending me something.
I put that in the private chat, John, because you need to open that outside of our stream.
Well, I'm just going to show the cover. This I'm not going to open it up. If you say not to open it up, I won't open it up. But
I don't know what's in those pages. I'm just saying.
The Book of Erotic Fantasy. There we go. Oh, okay. I think I know what this is. Oh no, it's not. Okay. There's okay. Yeah, I've never seen this before. I won't open it up, but I've never seen that before. And it looks poorly photoshopped, and it looks like, I don't know what it is, but there's the Lamentable Sorrows something role-playing game, and it's like like a super sexist, men conquering women kind of role-playing game. And I remember there was like a big hubbub about it, and it was banned. Like you couldn't even mention it. You get kicked out of convention. So of course I had to buy a copy. Never played it, but I don't know when something's banned. It's like, okay, I'll check it out. Might make sense if a dungeon has a succubus or two, a female demon whose job is to seduce men. Yep. Total party kills, though. I never did it. I the closest I came, I didn't even do it. we were playing a superhero game, and one of the major villains stole a nuclear bomb from the government and was threatening the world with it, like a Magneto type guy. And my friend's character said, I'm going to dismantle the bomb. Like he was using his powers and he was going to smash the bomb. And it was over Reykjavik, Iceland of all places. And he was going to destroy Iceland. And he said, I'm going to deactivate the bomb. And they managed to divert it over the Atlantic Ocean, and then it detonated. And all but one character died. And I didn't do it. And I just said, okay, if you roll a critical failure, it detonates the bomb. And he's like, okay. And he rolled a critical failure. Boom. So the only total party kill, except for one character, I didn't do it. I had nothing to do with it. My friend killed his entire superhero team. And it was funny because it became, if you read the Doom Patrol, the original Doom Patrol all died from a bomb. So we're like, hey, you Doom Patrolled the party. I had fun. My buddy made an overpowered monk. I made Eldritch Undead. I used to hate monks. And now I kind of like monks. I never played one, though.
I always thought they were just useless characters as well, just because the whole diamond skin thing with the, special martial arts training. It's like, I don't know about that.
Yeah, I kind of like the idea of monks. Like when I started reading about the Templars and the Hospitallers, they were monks. They were fighting monks.
Well, they just play a paladin then, which would
right,
be a warrior monk.
Paladins are monks, which is why I know this is anathema. This is the bad thing to say, but when I play my home brew Dungeons and Dragons, there's no character classes. You know what I mean? You want to be a wizard, that means you got to research and learn magic. You want to be a paladin, that just means you got to be a good warrior who somehow gets in tune with the holy. You want to be a thief, okay, so you learn magic and you steal things. Thief just means you steal things. So how do you steal things? Doesn't matter. Are you a warrior who steals things? Then you're a burglar. Are you a wizard who steals things? Then you're a wizard who steals things. So I got rid of all the classes. The other thing I got rid of was, races couldn't, like dwarves in classic D&D, dwarves couldn't be wizards. Why? Every mythology has dwarves as the ones making all the magic items. And how do they make the magic items if they don't know magic? That always drove me crazy. And the other thing I got rid of is only humans can be unlimited level. I was like, you telling me elves can't be high level wizards? They live for thousands of years. So I got rid of all of that. And it's funny, some of my friends just couldn't deal with it. I was like, you want to be a wizard? What class am I? You want to be a bard? Say you're a bard. Learn instruments. I like the song goes, and you never let that damn thief out of sight. That's why it was total party kill. I experimented too hard. Yeah, I do feel bad when players die, but if players don't die, then there's no tension. And if there's no tension, there's no fun. I say this to all my players at the beginning of a game. Like if you play for the first time, I said, there is always a chance of success and there's always a chance of failure, things are modified by your behaviors and your training and your skills and your choices, but I'm not out to kill you. I'm out to have fun. But if you die, you die. I'm not going to save you. I always say that, but I'll save you if it's the first time you play. If it's the first time you sit down at the table and your character just gets wiped out, that's not fun. So you kind of have plot armor for a little bit of while, but then you don't have plot armor anymore.
I can remember, I can remember walking into a room with a lich and just getting total party killed over and over and over again until my brother finally walked in after like my sixth try at this. And he's going, "You're stupid. Do you not know what level of weaponry you need to kill this thing?"
Right. I remember one of my friends, Joe, he came and went pretty quick. I think he lasted 6 months. And he played with us for a little while. And he was having fun. And then he did what every rookie player, I want to run a game. They think because they played 2 or 3 times, they run a game. So he ran a game. And I played an assassin. So I had this assassin character. And he's like, oh, there's a bounty out of 1,000,000 gold pieces. And it was at this, I forget what it was, but it was this like metallic snake because the picture looked cool in the Fiend folio, but it had 1 die 4 hit points. So my character, and he didn't know what that meant. So I went and I killed it. I got 1 million gold coins. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it was just way too easy. And he was like, well, that was anticlimactic. I'm like, you still want to be like, there's a reason why DMing is tough. You know, scaling the adventure. One funny thing I heard about Game of Thrones, it's a D&D session with super sadistic DM. Yeah. Yeah.
Which is funny because one of the things they used to say when I used to try to get my stories published in Dragon Magazine was, if this sounds like one of your adventures that you rolled up, we're going to drop it before we even get to page 2.
Yeah. Yeah, that's the thing. Adventures don't have like a story through line, you know. I gotta find it, but I think you get a kick out of it. It was somebody took the Lord of the Rings and explained it as if it was a D&D session. You know, it was kind of funny. Why Gandalf disappeared, because that guy left. He got a girlfriend, and they, you know, Gandalf was gone for a couple of adventure sessions, and then he comes back. His girlfriend broke up, and you know, it was just funny. And then when he was fighting the Balrog, that player lied because he wanted all the experience points, and then he came back leveled up as Gandalf the White. It was just pretty funny. I got to find that article. I had a kick out of it. All right, I got to go to bed. I didn't realize it's almost 10:30.
Yeah, we've been going for about almost 2.5 hours now, John.
Almost 2.5 hours. Anything you want to say?
No, I think we covered everything. Like I said to everybody, Crown the Destroyer, the link for it is in the description. You can get a copy now for Fun My Comic. Mad Scribe is another book that I'm participating in. If you want to go look that up, it's basically a D&D dungeon magazine kind of thing, although he likes his Cthulhu and stuff like that as well. I'll see everybody on Saturday if you are on my channel for my normal Saturday video.
I'm looking through this thing you told me not to scroll through. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, do not scroll through this book.
I can remember being on the stand of my local comic shop when it came out in the D&D. It was like, okay, no, I'm putting this back.
Yeah, I don't know. I remember I went to a Gary Con in Wisconsin, and I learned that playing 3-hour sessions with pre-made up characters with complete strangers was excruciating. So I ended up, they had a board games, and that's when I discovered Arkham Horror 2nd edition, and I set it up and I played by myself. Like, I went to Wisconsin to play a board game by myself, and I love that game, and that kickstarted my re-love of board game. But I remember there was this girl going around, and she was selling like a gothic leather, like they were vampire steampunk, and like the cover was just like, it just looked like a brochure to a fetish convention. And I was like, she's like, it's $10. It's the last day of the convention, $5. You know, I'm like, no, sorry. Not really bad, but like, I don't know. Sorry. Should I have bought it? I don't know. But she just looked at me like, you're a jerk. And I'll never forget, I had this story maybe I shouldn't tell, but I'm going to tell it. Jeff D, one of the artists for Dragon Magazine, Villains, Vigilantes, Dungeons & Dragons, and he's on my channel, and I was actually nervous because he was actually playing. I wonder if he remembered, but he used to like fight with me, threaten to sue me and stuff like that. And I always loved the deities and demigods. He drew Thor, and when I went there, they had the original artwork, $150 of that drawing of Thor, and I had it in my hand. I had the money. I'm like, oh my God, this is D&D history. I love this drawing. I've always loved, but like, I got to separate the art from the artist. And then I was like, I can't. And I put it down. I'm still mad at myself that I didn't buy it. The original drawing of Thor from the deities and demigods, just because Jeff D, he's too argumentative. See what happens when you fight on the internet? But good night, everybody. Check out her Christmas special. It's nearly done. Like I said, the lettering takes like less than a week, and then it's just see how many I should print. I'll be sending them out soon. I'm gonna For those of you, it's on Find My Comic right now. Here, I'll put up the. It's right here. You could click it. You could buy it now. If you want to wait, I think either July 10th or 15th. I forget the exact date. I'm going to relaunch on Kickstarter. I always like to give Fund My Comic exclusive time, and I don't want it to compete with anybody else. But then I'm going to go on Kickstarter, have like a Christmas in July thing going on, and relaunch. And then I'm probably going to do like a second chance campaign, because I think once we get around the holidays after the summer, people will be more in a mind of a Christmassy mind. But I really didn't think Renzo was going to be done this fast. Yeah, I really didn't think he was going to be done this fast. So I wanted to I'd rather give myself too much time than too little time. And also on Fund My Comic, you could get Crom the Destroyer. He's almost done. Almost done.
Working furiously.
I mean, you could make a book about the making of this book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. So there you go. Thanks for everybody who's been in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Like, subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications. If you're watching on RJ's channel, my channel is John's Longbox. If you're watching on my channel, RJ's channel is called The Fourth Age. Subscribe to both. Good night, Rex Blazer. And good night, Classy to me. It's good talking to you. There's a fun book I like to use as a DM. Nuisances, a comprehensive OGL. What is that one? There's a lot of fun ideas. What does OGL mean? I'm old man. I don't know what you young whippersnappers are saying. But I guess it's time to say goodbye, kids.
Bye, kids.